Hi everyone, I'm Adelina. I'm 25 and living with my dad in our family home. It's been 3 years since my mom passed away, and it's been tough. My dad and I were getting by with our routines and quiet dinners. Then Vanessa came along. At first, I was happy because dad seemed happier, but something about her felt wrong. Adelina, sweetie, she would say in a sugary voice, let me cook from now on. Your dad needs a woman's touch. I'd smile and say, sure, whatever makes dad happy. But then she started changing things in the house, moving furniture, replacing mom's favorite curtains, even suggesting new wall colors. This color is so dreary, she'd say. I remembered picking it with mom and felt upset. My best friend Zoe noticed too. She's trying to erase your mom. Zoe said one day, you need to stand your ground. Addie, I knew, but dad seemed happy, and I didn't want to cause trouble. Then I got an internship at the local art gallery, which was exciting. Congratulations, Dad said, hugging me. Your mom would be so proud. But I saw Vanessa's expression change when he mentioned mom. I hope this means you'll be out of the house more, she said, hinting that I should leave. I ignored her comment and focused on Dad's smile. That night, I overheard them talking. Don't you think it's time Adelina found her own place? Vanessa asked Dad. My heart sank. Was she trying to kick me out? She's still grieving, Dad replied. This is her home too, but Vanessa kept pushing for privacy. The next morning, Vanessa approached me in the hallway. Adelina, dear, she said sweetly, your father and I are getting serious, and we need our space. Don't you think it's time for you to move out? I was shocked. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere, I replied. Vanessa's expression turned cold. We'll see about that, she said as she walked away. I realized this was a battle, and I had no clue how to fight it. I walked into the kitchen, feeling uneasy. Dad and Vanessa were there, both smiling. Something felt wrong. Adelina, honey, we have news, Dad said happily. Vanessa and I are engaged. My world spun. Engaged? But they'd only been together a few months. Vanessa flashed her huge diamond ring and said, when you know, you know. I forced a smile, feeling sick inside. That night, I called Zoe in tears. She's taking over everything. Zoe, mom's things are disappearing, and the house is changing. I feel like a stranger in my own home. Stay strong, Addie, Zoe said. We'll figure this out. But things only got worse. Vanessa's son, Derek, moved in. He was awful. Hey sis, he'd say mockingly. Still living off daddy's money? I'd clench my teeth. I have a job, Derek. Unlike some people. One night, I overheard Vanessa and Dad arguing. Robert, darling, we should put the house in my name, for tax reasons, Vanessa said. I don't know, Van. It's been in my family for generations, Dad replied. Don't you trust me? She pushed. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to take our home. The next day, I confronted Dad. Are you seriously thinking about giving her the house? He looked uncomfortable. It's complicated, Addie. Vanessa understands these things. Dad, wake up. Can't you see what she's doing? But he just shook his head. You're overreacting. Vanessa loves us. I knew I needed proof, so I started digging, and I found it. Vanessa had a shady past, 3 ex-husbands, all rich, and all left broke after divorcing her. She was a pro at this. I showed Dad the evidence. Look, she's a con artist. But he wouldn't believe me. You're just jealous, Adelina. Vanessa makes me happy. Why can't you accept that? I stormed out, angry and heartbroken. How could he be so blind? That night, Vanessa cornered me. I know what you're up to, you little brat, Vanessa sneered, but it won't work. Your dad loves me now. You're just the sad little orphan girl who can't move on. I was furious. You think you've won? Just wait. I'll show everyone who you really are. She laughed. Good luck with that, sweetie. No one will believe you over me. Shaking with anger, I went to my room. Vanessa had Dad completely under her control. She was cutting me off, changing our home, erasing every memory of mom. And now, she wanted our house. I had to find a way to reveal who she truly was without losing Dad in the process. But how? As I stared at old family photos, an idea started forming. Vanessa thought she had all the power, but she didn't know who she was up against. I was my mother's daughter, and mom always taught me to stand up for what's right. I picked up my phone and called Zoe. Hey Zoe, I need your help. It's time to take down this witch. I didn't know the worst was yet to come, but I was ready for a fight. Vanessa had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up to shouting. Dad and Vanessa had just returned from their honeymoon, and something was wrong. I crept downstairs to listen. She needs to go. Robert, This is our home now, Vanessa demanded. But Vanessa, she's my daughter, Dad replied. I'm your wife, you have to choose, her or me. My heart sank, I couldn't believe this was happening. I rushed into the room. What's going on? I asked. Vanessa's face twisted with a smirk. Ah, Adelina, just in time, your father and I were talking about your living situation. What do you mean? I asked, looking at Dad. He couldn't meet my eyes. Addie, honey, he started, we think it might be time for you to find your own place. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're kicking me out of my own home? It's not like that, Dad stammered. We just need some space. Space? I yelled. This is my home. Mom and I chose everything in this house together. You can't just erase her, or me. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice sugary sweet. Darling, you're an adult now. It's time to spread your wings. I turned to Dad, desperate. Please don't do this, I begged, but he just stood there, silent and weak. You have a week, Vanessa said coldly. Pack your things. I ran to my room and slammed the door, overwhelmed by disbelief. I called Zoe, crying, they're kicking me out. Zoe, my own dad is letting it happen. Don't worry, Zoe said, you can stay with me and Ethan, we'll figure this out. As I packed, I found an old box of Mom's things. Inside were some papers, financial records, and old emails. My eyes widened as I read them. This was it, the proof I needed. That night, I decided to confront Vanessa. I know what you did to your ex-husbands, I said, holding up the evidence, the fraud, the embezzlement, it's all here. For a moment, fear flashed in Vanessa's eyes, but then she laughed. Oh honey, do you really think anyone will believe you? I'm a respectable businesswoman, you're just a jealous little girl. We'll see about that, I replied. The next day, I moved into Zoe and Ethan's spare room. As we unpacked, I told them everything. We need to expose her, Ethan said. But how? Then I had an idea. I have a friend at the art gallery who knows a financial investigator. What if we tip them off anonymously? Zoe grinned. Now we're talking. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my internship. The gallery owner, impressed with my work, offered me a chance to have my own solo exhibition. When I told Zoe, she squealed, "This is huge, Addie," but even though I was excited, it felt bittersweet. Dad had tried calling me, leaving voicemails like, "Adelina, please call me, I miss you," but I deleted them. He had made his choice. Then, about a month after I moved out, the bombshell dropped. Vanessa was arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Her past had finally caught up with her. I watched the news in shock as they led her away in handcuffs. Dad looked devastated, standing in the background. That night, he called me, his voice shaky. "Addie, I'm so sorry, you were right about everything. Can we talk?" Part of me wanted to hang up, but I agreed to meet him for coffee. When I saw him, he looked worn out and much older. "I've lost everything," he said. "The house, my savings, Vanessa took it all." I felt a mix of sadness and anger. "I tried to warn you." "I know," he said, looking ashamed. "I was a fool. Can you ever forgive me?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know, Dad. You chose her over me, over Mom's memory. That's not something I can just forget." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. I just hope someday we can rebuild our relationship." As I left the cafe, I felt lighter, like a dark cloud was finally lifting. I had my exhibition coming up, great friends, and a future full of possibilities. Vanessa had tried to ruin me, but in the end, she only made me stronger. I was ready to face whatever came next on my own terms. On the night of my exhibition, the gallery was buzzing with excitement. Among the crowd, I spotted Dad. "Adelina, this is incredible," he said, his eyes wide with pride. "I'm so proud of you." We found a quiet corner to talk. He apologized again, explaining that he had been in therapy, trying to understand his mistakes. I had mixed emotions, but agreed to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. Suddenly, Zoe rushed over with great news. "Addie, someone just bought all your paintings. A big real estate developer wants to commission more." I was stunned. This was beyond my wildest dreams. In the months that followed, my career skyrocketed. Commissions kept coming in, and soon I was house hunting for a studio. That's when we found our old family home, now on the market after foreclosure. "I want to buy it," I said impulsively. With my new success, I purchased our old family home. Standing in the empty living room, memories came flooding back. Ethan asked, "What are you going to do with all this space?" I smiled. "How would you two like to be my roommates?" Their eyes lit up. and we began turning the house into a place filled with new love and laughter. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying the sunset, Dad stopped by. I invited him to join us, realizing that family isn't just about blood, but about those who stand by you. Vanessa had tried to tear us apart, but in the end, she only made us stronger. I had my chosen family now, Zoe, Ethan, and even Dad, who was slowly earning back my trust. As for Vanessa, she was in jail, her reputation destroyed, but I didn't think much about her anymore. She had no power over me. I had faced my struggles, stood up for myself, and come out stronger. The future felt bright, filled with possibilities and surrounded by real love. A few weeks later, I got shocking news. Vanessa had tried one last con while in jail, but it failed badly. It led to even more charges and exposed her whole fraud network. Her son, Derek, was caught up in it and was also facing legal trouble for helping her. As I sat on the porch processing everything, Dad joined me. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked gently. I nodded, feeling a surprising sense of relief. "Yeah, I am. It's really over now." He smiled. "You know, your mom would be so proud of how you handled everything. You're stronger than both of us." Tears filled my eyes, but they were tears of healing, not pain. As the sun set on another day, I looked around at my reclaimed home, now filled with the warmth of true family and friends. I hadn't just survived the storm, I had thrived on the other side. The journey was tough, but it brought me exactly where I needed to be, and for that, I was truly grateful. The story ends here, but I have a question for you. Was I right to cut ties with my father after he chose Vanessa over me? Or should I have given him a chance to make things right sooner? What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions might help others going through similar family struggles. If this story spoke to you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We share more stories about overcoming toxic relationships and personal growth. Your support helps us keep creating content that empowers others to stand up for themselves and rebuild their lives after betrayal. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the one we're born into. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to read your responses.
For the past 20 years since we got married, I thought I had been doing my best for my husband Paul and my mother-in-law, Dorothy. But then, out of the blue, Paul told me, "Starting next month, I'm going to live with Mom and Angela," announcing his plans to move in with Dorothy and his sister Angela. To make matters worse, Dorothy insulted me by saying, "Parasites from outside the family should go back to their own homes." That was the moment I finally woke up. I said, "Understood. Then I'll leave." With those words, I left the house the next day. However, when furniture and appliances started being moved out one after another, and Paul and his family heard that I had moved into a new condominium reputed to be worth $1 million, they were furious and came storming over. My name is Linda, and I'm 48 years old. I work in the accounting department of an air conditioning company. I lived with Paul, who is 2 years younger than me, and my mother-in-law Dorothy. We have no children. Paul and I first met when he joined the large real estate development company where I worked. Initially, I watched from the sidelines as he was doted on by female colleagues and older male employees, thinking he was just a man of these times. But for some reason, Paul said to me, "Other accountants are kind of hard to approach, but you have a gentle aura, Linda." He started assigning most of his paperwork to me. However, whether he was naturally scatterbrained or just carefree, I couldn't tell, but even when I pointed out errors in his documents or last-minute submissions, he would quickly apologize, saying, "I'm really sorry." While I appreciated his willingness to apologize, the fact that he rarely corrected his behavior meant I often ended up working overtime because of him. It seemed clever, or rather sly, to keep up a cheerful facade, but each time I couldn't help feeling a bit troubled inside. Yet, whenever I appeared to struggle with the office supplies provided, he would bring me stationery he recommended, showing a thoughtfulness that always made me forgive him. In the end, I was being won over, just as he was, by taking care of him. Our relationship took a significant leap forward when I fell ill on the commuter train. Perhaps due to staying late at work during the busy season, I suddenly felt dizzy. Somehow, I managed to endure until I reached the station closest to our office, but then I slumped over on a bench on the platform, unable to move and fighting the nausea that was creeping up on me. Noticing my condition, Paul, despite my protests about getting his suit dirty, carried me to the station's medical room, following the station staff's instructions. Afterward, I took some medicine I had with me and lay down for a while. Eventually, the dizziness subsided, and I contacted the office again, only to be instructed by my boss to go home for the day. Moreover, Paul, who had stayed with me, was ordered to make sure I got home safely. Though I initially refused, I ended up letting him escort me home. The next day, I went to work as usual, apologized to my boss and colleagues, and then visited Paul in the sales department to explain the situation to his boss and apologize. "I really inconvenienced you, and I want to do something to make it up to you. How about this? Treat me to dinner this Friday. I'm short on cash right before payday." Paul's innocent request made me burst out laughing, and I agreed. While I intended it to be a one-time meal, he insisted. "Now that I've gotten my paycheck, let me treat you this time as a way of saying thanks." A reciprocation of thanks, and then another, somehow led to us being seen as a couple by those around us before we knew it. But when I rushed to deny the rumors, I found I was the only one in a panic. Paul, ever the laid-back one, said, "There's no need to deny it so desperately. I don't mind being thought of that way." Just like that, we came to be treated as a couple by everyone around us. And 2 years later, when I turned 28, "Maybe it's about time we got married. It would probably make everyone else feel more at ease," he suggested, and we got married. However, I had intended to keep working, but it was unexpected when Paul, who also worked at the same company, told me it was suffocating and asked me to quit. "Considering your age, shouldn't you focus on having children first?" Similarly to Dorothy, Paul also strongly suggested that I resign from my job. Moreover, while we had hoped to live in a condominium about 30 minutes away by train if we were both working, the conversation about living with Paul's parents came up. In fact, my father-in-law had passed away 10 years ago, and ever since my sister-in-law Angela, who is 4 years older than Paul, got married and moved out 3 years ago, Dorothy and Paul had been living alone together. Although I knew as the eldest son, Paul would eventually live with his parents, I wasn't keen on starting our marriage living with them. However, if Paul were to move out, Dorothy, being left alone, strongly opposed living separately. Convinced by the economic benefits of saving on rent, we started our married life living together. For a while after we got married, everything was peaceful. Dorothy was proud of Angela, who graduated from a prestigious university, landed a job at a major general trading company, and married an elite man from her workplace. Despite being the eldest son, Dorothy seemed to show little interest in Paul. Angela, who lived in a condominium about 30 minutes away by train from her parents' home, often begged Dorothy to help with household chores. "Mom, please come help. I'm too busy every day to handle all the housework." Dorothy, flattered by her beloved daughter's plea, didn't mind at all and regularly went to Angela's condominium, acting like a maid, cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry. However, there were times when Dorothy alone wasn't enough to handle everything, or when Angela took a vacation and they went out for afternoon tea at their favorite hotel, that I would also be called upon to help. But on regular days, Dorothy barely interfered with Paul and me, making our cohabitation more comfortable than I had anticipated. Given that, I thought helping out at Angela's place occasionally wasn't much of an issue. However, one day, Angela and Dorothy planned a one-night trip for rest and relaxation. During their absence, I was asked to tidy up Angela's house alone. Angela said it would be bad to inconvenience her husband while we're gone, so please take care of the cleaning, laundry, and prepare meals in advance. After sending Angela and Dorothy off and receiving the keys, I entered Angela's condominium and began doing the household chores as instructed. Cleaning, laundry, ironing, I went about my usual routine. But when it came time to store the prepared dishes in the fridge, make sure you chill his favorite brand of beer. He gets grumpy if it's not cold, I remembered being told. Checking the fridge, I found not a single bottle of the crucial beer. Only the mineral water and beauty drinks Angela drinks every night. I should have checked before going shopping. I regretted, but it was too late. Reluctantly, I headed to the nearest supermarket, only to find they didn't stock the specific brand of beer. The beer Angela's husband preferred was a Belgian brand, not as readily available as domestic brands in any supermarket. Initially, I thought finding it would be easy if I just went to another store, but after visiting nearby supermarkets and drugstores that also sell food, I couldn't find the brand anywhere. Back then, map apps weren't as widespread, and I wasn't familiar with the area around Angela's condominium, so I had no idea where to find what stores. Despite rushing around in a panic, I couldn't find it, and time was running out. Eventually, I caught a taxi to a liquor store a bit further away and finally found the beer. By the time I returned to the condominium, it was nearly 5 p.m. I just wanted to put the beer in the fridge and head home. As I entered Angela's room, I saw her husband, Charles, standing in the living room. "Charles, you're home early." As I said this, trying to tidy up the apron and the bag of food containers left on the sofa. "What's all this?" "I was told we hired someone to take care of the house," he questioned. According to Charles, he had initially planned to invite his mother to live with them since they were both going to be working full-time. "My family is just like my wife's. My dad has passed away, and since I have no siblings, my mom is the only one I can rely on. So, I asked her to live with us in exchange for helping with household chores," he explained. However, Angela retorted, "Then I want to invite my mom to live with us too. It's unfair and dishonest to favor only your mother." I was scolded for that. As a result of the discussion, it was decided not to rely on either of our parents, but to hire someone for the household chores. And it was settled that we would share the costs for this. However, in reality, Dorothy and I were secretly called upon to do the housework. Upon learning the truth, Charles immediately contacted Angela's mobile phone. Perhaps sensing trouble, Angela and Dorothy rushed back from their trip, but it escalated into a big fight with Charles demanding explanations. Unable to leave and forced to listen in, it seemed Angela had been using the money Charles gave her for housekeeping on her own spa treatments and leisure activities with Dorothy. Dorothy managed to apologize on the spot, promising to be more careful in the future. But later on, it came to light that Dorothy and Angela had been gifting presents to and going out drinking with the handsome stylist at their favorite hair salon. Furious, especially after the previous incident, Charles refused to listen to Dorothy's persuasion, leading to a divorce. Since Angela and her husband had only been married for about 5 years and lived in a rental condominium, there was no dispute over assets, and they divorced without any compensation. It seems she couldn't bear the rumors at the workplace since they worked at the same company. Angela, having been scouted, resigned and moved to another company simultaneously with her divorce. However, it seems she struggled to build her career as hoped in the new environment. Angela, frustrated, began to lash out at me along with Dorothy. "It's all your fault this happened. If only you had handled things better, none of this would have occurred. You're the one who ruined my life." That's how they started blaming me. Moreover, at a time when I was distressed over not being able to have children, Dorothy mocked me, saying, "I wanted to see my grandchildren, but I guess it's for the best. A grandchild born from such a defective woman wouldn't have been lovable anyway." She said that bluntly. The sheer unfairness made me burst into tears. But what shocked me more was when Paul saw me crying and disdainfully said, "If you're going to cry and regret your sins now, why couldn't you have just done as they said? It's me who wants to cry, being caught up in your mistakes." Hearing that made me feel so devastated, my legs almost gave way. Because it meant Paul seriously thought I was to blame, despite knowing everything. In other words, I had no allies in this house. Realizing this, I immediately thought of divorce, but being a housewife with no job made it not so simple to just say I wanted a divorce. I could go back to my parents' house, but moving back unemployed to a house where my brother and his wife lived nearby would just make me feel small. And it would likely be hard to find a job in the countryside that would allow me to live on my own. So, I decided to focus first on establishing a financial foundation, swallowing my pride. I found a part-time job in accounting, secretly relying on connections from my previous job. I got permission by tearfully telling Dorothy and Paul, "It pains me to just be a housewife when we're struggling to have children, so I want to at least work a part-time job to help with the household finances." And I started working the next month. Of course, neglecting housework could lead to snide comments and possibly demands to quit my job. That's why I pushed myself hard, even when tired or feeling unwell. I made no compromises at work, seizing any chance to improve and continuing to strive. As a result, I was promoted to a full-time position in the second year of my part-time job. 5 years later, I was invited by a former boss to join the current air conditioning company and have continued to work hard. But recently, as we approached our 20th wedding anniversary, after dinner, as I was doing the dishes, Paul came and said, "Come to the living room, I have something to tell you." It was unusual for him to seek me out as he usually spent his time happily with Dorothy, indifferent to whatever I was doing in the house. With that thought, I went to the living room, and before I could even sit down, "This has already been decided," Paul began. "Starting next month, I'm going to live with Mom and Angela," he declared. Dumbfounded, Dorothy added, "Angela's been overworked at her new job, got sick, and needs to recuperate at home. It's best for her to relax here. And if that's the case, it's better without an extra mouth to feed, right?" Then, coming over to my side on purpose, she said, "Parasites from outside the family should go back to their own homes," making a shooing gesture at me. They watched my reaction with a malicious smile, but inside, I smiled at the thought of being freed from this hassle. Then I slowly smiled at them and said, "I understand. I'll leave tomorrow afternoon." As I walked to my room, I glanced at their faces, as dumbfounded as I had been a moment ago. The next morning, after seeing Paul off to work, I waited for the second-hand goods buyer I had contacted the night before. Unaware, Dorothy was startled by the arrival of the unfamiliar men, but we started the work without minding her. From the kitchen, the refrigerator, oven range, dishwasher, Dorothy's favorite soda maker, and dining set were all taken. Of course, I didn't forget the IH cooking heater. Next, in the living room, the TV, air conditioner, the diligently working robot vacuum, and AI speaker. The off-season hot carpet and sofa set were also listed. Then, the fully automatic washing machine, Paul's room's computer desk, and bookshelf. In addition, the air conditioner, bed, and dresser in Dorothy and Paul's rooms were quickly appraised. As the dealer started making a call, Dorothy, seemingly coming to her senses, rushed over furiously. "Hey! What are you starting here? Entering people's bedrooms! she shrieked at me, to which I replied with a smile. Since I'm just a parasite from outside the family, I thought I should at least take care of my own belongings before making my exit. Just then, additional personnel called by the dealer arrived. After that, the furniture and appliances listed were swiftly moved out of my husband's family home. Overwhelmed by the efficient and purposeful movement, Dorothy could only pace restlessly around. Then, as a final touch, after removing all the room lights, the dealer quickly left. What remained were Paul's computer and the bedding for his bed placed directly on the floor, and Dorothy's cosmetics left on the floor, visible to the eye. Then, Dorothy exclaimed again.
Wait a minute! Do you think you can get away with doing something like this?
To which I simply responded, I'll be consulting a lawyer for the rest. With that, I left my husband's family home, pulling along a suitcase I had packed the night before. A week later, after receiving a call from the lawyer I had hired, Paul, Dorothy, and Keiko rushed to the lawyer's office on the same day. When I arrived late,
You call us here and then show up late. What a disgraceful woman!
Immediate angry shouts were thrown at me. But then, Mr. Smith, the lawyer, clarified. We did not summon you here. It was you who came unannounced right after we informed you that I would be handling future negotiations. Hearing this, the normally confrontational Paul immediately quieted down. Then, as if seeking vengeance for her son, Dorothy was ready to fight. Now that we're face to face, let's talk. After leaving like a thief, there's no way you can just come back. But if you're willing to apologize and show remorse, that's a different story. She said in one breath, glaring at me. Angela and Paul were nodding vigorously beside her, probably thinking I would jump at the chance to discuss this topic. How naive. At my signal, the lawyer smoothly began. Of course, she has no intention of returning. The discussion is about signing the divorce papers, property division, and compensation. Stunned by these words, the three of them exclaimed,
We're not getting a divorce!
Property division and compensation.
How audacious! How dare you!
All at once, creating a racket. When things got out of control, the lawyer's coughing brought some quiet, and I calmly stated, Divorce is a settled matter. If you do not agree, we are prepared to proceed with mediation or court. They tried to raise their voices again, but another cough from the lawyer made them quiet down. After some whispered discussions among themselves, they surprisingly quickly signed the divorce papers I presented. However, their attitude changed again when it came to property division and compensation. How audacious to talk about property division! You were just a part-timer, practically a parasite to Paul. To think we made such a failure our son's wife, we should be the ones receiving compensation.
We won't pay a penny!
They began to berate again. Then, I presented the recent 5 years household accounts and the bank account statements I used for managing living expenses. Initially, Paul and Dorothy didn't understand, but as the lawyer explained with the documents, their complexions darkened. Because for about the last 5 years, I had been paying approximately $3,200 a month for living expenses, practically covering everything.
That's ridiculous! I've been contributing $1,500 a month to our household.
Paul protested, but against the $1,500 Paul deposited, the revolving credit payments for Paul and Dorothy's cards were nearly the same amount. Effectively, even if his salary was deposited, it just went out from one hand to the other. Instead, the $3,200 from my salary account covered the remodeling loan, Paul and Dorothy's car loan, groceries, and all the loans for furniture and appliances. In the past 5 years, since Linda became the head of the accounting department at her current company, Almost all of her income went into the household. That amounts to about $190,000 in total. Despite such contribution, it's quite something to be called a parasite, the lawyer stated. The three were wide-eyed, flipping through the documents, but what the lawyer stated was an undeniable fact. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, Dorothy suddenly said,
"Hey, Linda. We were once husband and wife, daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, and sisters-in-law, weren't we? Let's stop fighting and walk our separate paths peacefully."
She tried to appeal to me with a conciliatory tone. I responded, "Yes, that's right. And I also let my temper get the best of me the other day and sold off all the furniture and appliances. Let's both act like adults and part ways peacefully." With that, I requested the lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. We both agreed to renounce our rights to property division and compensation in the divorce agreement. After making it official with a notary public, Paul and I shook hands, ending our 20-year marriage. But the story didn't end there. After completing the procedures, Paul, Dorothy, and I went our separate ways. 2 months later, I began receiving numerous messages from them on the only social media account I hadn't blocked. Initially, I ignored them, but the constant barrage of messages, day and night, became too annoying. Hearing they had even shown up at the lawyer's office demanding to see me, I decided to meet them one last time to set things straight. This time, I arrived a bit earlier than the agreed time, but Paul and the others were already there, looking restless and somewhat shabbier than before. As soon as they saw me, Paul barked,
"You bought a room in that new condominium in front of the station, didn't you?"
I had chosen a property not affiliated with Paul's company, but they must have found out somehow. Then Dorothy joined in, yelling,
"Where did you hide that money? If it's from during our marriage, it should be shared property, right? Coward!"
Their noise was unbearable, so I reminded them that we had both agreed to waive our rights to property division. They seemed to have conveniently forgotten anything unfavorable to them. Paul and my mother-in-law turned pale, but quickly retorted,
"That's the same as being tricked. The one who hid it is to blame."
The lawyer then coolly stated, "The funds for Linda's condominium purchase came from the sale proceeds of stock options she had received upon joining her current company. This does not fall under marital assets. If you still claim rights, we'll see you in court." Paul fell silent at that. But Dorothy went even further.
"Oh, is that so? If that's your attitude, we'll take this to court or whatever it takes."
Saying this, she huffed angrily. I then countered, "In that case, I'll also file for damages." The psychological damage wasn't minor, considering you were so openly looking for a new partner even before our divorce was finalized. I laughed as I said this, making Dorothy's face go pale. Next to her, Angela, who had been sitting dazed, also turned white when I added, "Of course, Angela, I'll be claiming damages for the emotional distress you've caused me. I've kept all the evidence of the verbal abuse and harassment you've inflicted on me after your divorce from Charles." I laid out a voice recorder, USB drives, and printed messages as proof. Lastly, I said,
"By the way, Angela, you know Mary, right? Actually, she's the daughter of my direct superior."
As I looked straight into Angela's eyes with a smile, her complexion turned even paler. I had already discussed and consulted my current employer to some extent about the situation to prevent any disruption in my work. In fact, that supervisor has a daughter named Mary. I've met her a few times at company BBQs and other events, a cheerful and wonderful woman. However, right after graduating from university and joining a company, Mary faced terrible harassment from her boss and is currently on leave due to mental health issues. The person who harassed her was Angela. Mary's parents divorced when she was young, and since then, she has been living with her father. Because Mary didn't have any close female figures, I was asked to take her out for meals and shopping to help her get a change of scenery, to which I happily agreed. Our conversations started with trivial matters, and I mostly listened to Mary, but I was shocked when Angela's name came up. At the same time, I learned that Angela's so-called medical leave was a complete lie. She was actually under a home stay order because her treatment of Mary had become a problem at work. This prompted me to start preparing for a divorce as quickly as possible. If Angela were to be demoted or fired, she would undoubtedly end up moving into my husband's family home. That would put me in an even more difficult financial and mental position. I was wondering how to initiate a divorce to my advantage when I was conveniently kicked out by them. I made a show of selling all the furniture and appliances. I pretended to make a sacrifice by giving up claims to property division and compensation. The reason I made a notarized document was because of the new share options. After all, due to Paul and Dorothy, I had hardly any savings, so if we had gone through a strict property division, I would have ended up paying out more. There's no guarantee of getting compensation if there's no money to pay it, even if I won the case. That's why it was necessary to make them give up their claim to property division by bringing up the issue of living expenses and making them feel indebted. Paul, Dorothy, and Angela finally understood everything. The foolish trio, who thought they could go back to their usual lives without the parasite me, left with their shoulders slumped. Their downfall afterwards was severe. Dorothy, just as I had pointed out, not only spread the word that she was going to decisively break up her son with his part-time job-capable wife and me, but also said,
"So, if you know any nice girls, I'd love for you to introduce them to my son."
She even went as far as to demand dinner parties to introduce her son to women. Of course, among those approached, people of standing talked behind Dorothy's back, saying it was absurd to look for a new partner for her son before even finalizing the divorce with his current wife. Moreover, setting such conditions, she must be greatly overestimating what her son is worth. They were said to have laughed at this. And the conditions Dorothy deemed suitable for Paul's wife were astonishing.
First off, she should be in her early 20s. Anyone older would be too influenced by society's nonsense about equality in marriage, right?
She was reported to have said. This alone was shocking enough, but Dorothy didn't stop there.
Of course, we'll cut ties with the wife's family, but before that, they should hand over their inheritance up front. We need someone with a certain level of assets and financial power. And could we get a medical checkup to ensure she's capable of having children?
She went as far as to say this, earning herself contempt from listeners. Unaware of the cold stares around her, she continued.
Of course, being tall, stylish, and beautiful is a given. Thank you in advance.
Naturally, no marriage proposals came Dorothy's way, and in her desperation, she apparently sent a flurry of urgent calls and messages. However, she was either turned down because no one met her conditions or simply ignored. Soon, the rumors of my divorce spread among friends, acquaintances, and neighbors, making them a subject of ridicule. Perhaps unable to bear the disdainful looks due to their previously arrogant behavior, they ended up confining themselves within their home, not going out anymore. Recently, there have been rumors about hearing screams, shouts, and the sound of breaking dishes coming from their house, supposedly from Dorothy. Previously, Dorothy would vent her frustrations on me or indulge in spending to relieve stress. Now, without me as her punching bag and unable to shop or take short trips for stress relief, she might be wreaking havoc at home. Meanwhile, Paul had left all financial matters to me since our marriage. He seemed not to understand the basics of budgeting, and even after the lawyer explained it clearly, he remained overconfident, thinking,
if she could manage the living expenses, then I can easily do it too if I put my mind to it.
That appears to have been his careless assumption. However, Dorothy and Angela, who were supposed to take over the household chores, abandoned everything, considering it too much of a hassle. Meals became all delivery or takeout, and cleaning and laundry were left to a housekeeping service, among other miscellaneous tasks, leading to a financial breakdown in just 2 months. The credit card Dorothy used for living expenses was quickly revoked, and their meals turned to just toast and coffee for breakfast, instant noodles for lunch, and mainly takeout for dinner. Laundry was done all at once when they ran out of clothes. Living a life of only cleaning visible areas, they ended up leading a nutritionally unbalanced and unsanitary lifestyle. Paul, who was once praised for looking younger than his age, gained unhealthy weight, his skin became rough, his hair greasy, and his once handsome appearance vanished. Not fitting the image of a salesperson, he received a flood of complaints from clients. This led to him being relegated to back-end work, with a reduced salary. Paul reached out to the lawyer, saying,
"I've come to my senses. I was deceived by Mom and Angela. I want to cut ties with them and start over."
Through phone calls and emails. But as pre-arranged,
"I've been instructed not to engage with you under any circumstances,"
was the firm response. They warned that if they attempted to approach my workplace or new home, the police would be contacted immediately. Thankfully, that put an end to any further contact. As for Mary, another main character in this saga, she was furious when I shared the entire story with her.
"What's that supposed to mean? I thought she might have learned something from what happened with me, but she's blaming her divorce on you and resorting to such harassment. She's always been that kind of person, hasn't she?"
She raged. After contacting the company where she was on leave, intending to resign, she was called in and questioned about her reasons. Mary explained that while the issue was personal and not directly related to her work, she disclosed everything about the situation to HR and administration. After ensuring that those present were shocked by the story, she stated,
"There must have been faults on my part in the issue with me as well. I was hoping we could work together for the company if you sincerely reflected on it. But I cannot see that happening,"
she asserted firmly. While presenting her resignation letter, she said,
"Working under her again would be a mental health hazard for me."
Mary then transferred to a competitor that allowed her to work remotely until her health fully recovered. At her former department, the news of Mary's sudden resignation, who was supposed to be on leave, shocked everyone. Rumors spread that the harassment from Angela continued outside the company, leading to an uncontrollable situation. Some colleagues, who admired Mary, a leader among the younger staff, started considering changing jobs, prompting the higher-ups to convene urgent discussions. As a result, Angela was transferred to a subsidiary in another state after her home stay period ended. Despite Angela's resistance, claiming the transfer was an unfair treatment, the threat of dismissal forced her to reluctantly accept the assignment. However, at the new company, rumors had already spread, leaving her completely isolated, with no one to socialize with and receiving only the bare minimum of communication needed for work. Crying to Paul and Dorothy,
"I want to quit. I want to come back,"
she was met with,
"We don't need an unemployed troublemaker. Whose fault do you think this is?"
"That's right. You are the real disaster and parasite." She was harshly rebuked by the two. Now, in a corner of the subsidiary where no one approaches her, she continues to work, a shadow of her former self. As for me, after the divorce from Paul was finalized and this whole ordeal ended, encouraged by Mary, I remarried my boss after about half a year of living together. To be honest, considering my 20-year marriage with Paul, I wasn't inclined towards remarrying, but Mary said something along the lines of,
It might sound odd coming from his daughter, but marriage can be good depending on the partner. I think my dad, despite his age, is quite a catch.
Mary encouraged me, seeing my hesitation. Indeed, in less than a year, I've laughed more than during the entire 20 years with Paul. Having a partner to share a life where I can be myself has truly brought happiness. Sometimes, I think if I had made this decision sooner. I do feel a bit of regret, but dwelling on the past and wasting the remaining time seems far more wasteful. I plan to cherish the peaceful life ahead with my new husband and daughter. Of course, Mom and Dad get the biggest room. If you defy that, it's divorce, remember? You're my wife, so don't you dare defy us. Oscar jests.
You should be fine with the storage room. Giving you a big room is just a waste.
Grace adds with a chuckle. Considering we're letting someone else live under our roof, you should just be grateful for that. Marshall remarks humorously. The words of my husband Oscar, mother-in-law Grace, and father-in-law Marshall leave me feeling dizzy. It's true that Oscar and his parents have stubbornly refused to accept me as family, subjecting me to cruel treatment. But this is too much. After all, I was the one who found this house. Despite their numerous requests to move, they did nothing. So, at the end of my patience, I took time out of my busy work schedule to visit a real estate agent and found us a good home. Yet, they act as if it's only natural for me to devote myself to them. They believe I'm not even family and I should just be grateful for being allowed to live in the same house with them. I can't keep trying anymore. I've strived to become a true part of the family. But at this moment, I've reached the end of my tether. My name is Jessica, a 38-year-old housewife. I live with my husband. I met Oscar through a friend's introduction. After a relentless pursuit from Oscar, we started dating. And from there, everything progressed smoothly to marriage. After our wedding, we moved close to his parents' home. The move was spurred by the news of Marshall hurting his back. While Marshall wasn't in need of constant care, his mobility was limited enough to require assistance for longer trips. So we settled nearby in-laws' house to give them a ride when they needed and visit them regularly to check in. Initially, my in-laws seemed appreciative of our efforts. As Oscar's wife, I wanted to support them. With that sentiment, I did what I could while juggling a busy work schedule. However, as time passed, my in-laws' attitude drastically changed. Jessica, when are you going to quit your job? A married woman working, it's hurting Oscar's reputation. Why not just quit and become a housewife? They suggested. My in-laws had always seemed dissatisfied with my continued work post-marriage. Perhaps in their time, it was the norm for a married woman to quit her job. But such a mindset is painfully outdated. Grace, these days, it's perfectly acceptable for married women to continue working. You know, retirement inevitably requires money, right? I want to keep working to ensure we don't face hardships in the future. I earnestly respond to Grace's words. As we age, living off a pension alone becomes an increasingly difficult proposition. That's why I believe it's important to work and save while we still can. But Jessica, isn't it because you're working that you and Oscar don't have time for intimacy? You're already 38 and he has crossed 40. It's troubling for us if you can't even provide a grandchild. She argues. It's true that we don't have children. But it's not for a lack of trying. We've done what we could, and yet here we are. Harsh words and cold glances from my in-laws leave me feeling terribly uncomfortable. Could it be that I'm the one at fault? Should I have quit my job and focused on starting a family? I feel restless, troubled by the thought that I might be doing something wrong. It was around this time that my in-laws' behavior noticeably deteriorated. They treated me as if I wasn't part of the family. And this attitude, like a contagious disease, spread to Oscar as well. Initially, the changes were minimal. Ignoring my attempts to communicate, or Oscar and his parents going on trips without me. I questioned such actions, but thinking it unwise to dwell on them too much, I let them be. That only led to worse behavior. Returning from work one day, I found Oscar drinking in the living room. Not wanting to disturb his evening ritual, I quietly entered and started tending to some household chores. Then he let out a heavy sigh. What's this about you leaving the house empty till this hour because of work? Mom, even when she was tired from chores, was always by my side at this time, never making me feel lonely. A wife that makes her husband feel lonely is failing her role. He lamented. He often compared me to Grace. Every time I made a mistake, he would point out how Grace would have done it, lecturing me on how inadequate I was as a wife. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'll be more mindful from now on, I replied. Challenging Oscar in these moments only led to more intense anger and worse situations. Drawing from past experiences, I refrained from arguing and quickly apologized. Perhaps my action was interpreted as an admission of guilt, as he continued with even harsher words. Listen, the only reason you can still work is that Mom and Dad are kind. But I won't be as kind to you like them. Quit your job quickly and become a housewife. It's time to stop being so selfish. I've been told to quit my job time and again. Why do I have to hear such things? I'm working with the future in mind, so why must that be dismissed? He really seems to dislike that I don't conform to his wishes. Sometimes, I even feel like I'm not treated as part of the family. But still, I've persevered. In the midst of these challenging days, he came up with a suggestion. He wanted us to live with his parents. They won't stay healthy forever, right? They might get injured while we're away. To be there for them immediately if that happens, I think living together is necessary. This single statement moved his parents, proud of their thoughtful son. But for me, it felt like just another source of distress was being added to my life. And to make matters worse, although they spoke of wanting to live together, they never took any action to make it happen. It was always left up to me. You're always so unhelpful, so the least you could do is make an effort for the family, Oscar said. He instructed me to find time amidst my busy work schedule to visit real estate agents and look for a house suitable for us to live together. Honestly, it was a particularly busy period for me, and finding the time was a real struggle. But somehow, I managed and found a potential property. When I showed the details to them, their reaction was surprisingly positive. We decided to visit the house that weekend. I managed to take a day off work for it.
It's really spacious and nice. I think Mom and Dad can really relax in this house,
he remarked. Guided by the real estate agent, we walked through the house. The house was large enough to offer a room for each of the four of us, with spare rooms for guests. While checking out each room, Oscar and his parents discussed what each room could be used for. I trailed behind, quietly observing their excited chatter. It seemed we had finished touring the last room. They seemed convinced by the house after the viewing. I felt relieved, thinking the move might go smoothly after all. But reality was far more cruel. Of course, Mom and Dad get the biggest room. Defy that and it's divorce, remember? You're my wife, so don't you dare defy us, Oscar said, startling me. His utter disregard for me and his selfish decision-making for his parents left me stunned. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Grace chimed in.
You should be fine with the storage room. Giving you a big room is just a waste.
And then Marshall continued, reinforcing their words. Being grateful for letting an outsider live in the same house, that's the least you can do. He adds, divorce threats, being told the storage room is enough, and being called an outsider. These words, unthinkable from a family, make my head spin. I had a feeling, but now it's clear, I was never truly seen as family. After all the effort I put into finding a house for them. And yet, to be treated like this is unimaginable. The anger I had kept deep inside is now surging to the surface. I can't keep trying for them anymore. In fact, I feel an urge to make them thoroughly regret taking my feelings for granted. With that resolve, I decided to rebel against their selfishness. Unaware of my feelings, they were excited about the new house. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I spoke my mind. Then it's divorce. I found that house in between my busy work schedule, and this is how you treat me? I've reached my limit. I can't be part of this family anymore. I stated it clearly. Continuing as a family with them was absolutely impossible. I had reached my breaking point. Then, what? At my words, they could only utter. Oscar, in particular, was so shocked that his face turned pale.
Jessica, are you serious? Who else would accept someone as worthless as you other than him? If you divorce here, you might end up alone forever,
Grace said. Calling someone worthless, that's what I'd like to say to them. Who has been trying hard for them all this time? They seemed to have forgotten all that, and I couldn't help but sigh. Whatever, do what you want. I never accepted you as family anyway. If you're going to leave, I'd prefer you do it quickly, Marshall stated. Even after getting married, he stubbornly refused to accept me as family. Perhaps that's why he seems okay with the idea of divorce. It's almost a relief that he's not trying to stop me unnecessarily. The in-laws didn't try to hold me back. Only Oscar seemed somewhat uneasy, but having brought up divorce first, he seemed unable to say anything and just shifted his gaze uncomfortably. Taking their lack of resistance as an opportunity, I started preparing to leave the house. For the time being, it looks like I'll be staying in a weekly rental apartment. The thought of finally being free from the troubles named Oscar and his parents made me feel a sense of liberation. As I finished packing my things and was about to leave the house the next day, I thrust the divorce papers in front of Oscar. Of course, I'm fully intent on divorcing, so I had filled out everything in advance, leaving only the part for him to complete. Hearing the news, the in-laws also came to our house. Despite their calling me ungrateful upon seeing my determination to divorce, I won't be family anymore, so their petty remarks no longer matter to me. Are you really going through with a divorce? You can still change your mind. Oscar finally spoke. But he hesitated to sign the divorce papers, leaving me in a bind. We continued living under the same roof for a while, but as time passed, his behavior changed, frequently questioning if this was really what I wanted. Honestly, this is nothing but a hassle. Yes, I really intend to divorce. What, getting cold feet now? Forgotten what you've done? After behaving like that, you don't get to say you don't want a divorce now. I say firmly. His behavior almost seems like he doesn't want a divorce. But such an attitude is inconvenient for me. I've been looking forward to this day, to be freed from them. And I don't want to waste any more time here. Questioning his indecision, Grace raises her voice.
He wouldn't get cold feet over something like this. Even with a woman as worthless as you, kind-hearted Oscar can't just abandon you. Oh, poor thing. You shouldn't bother yourself with such a woman.
With that, Grace strokes his back. But his expression only grows more severe. I sense that Grace's words are only pushing Oscar further to the edge, but I keep that to myself and just smile. Right. Oscar wouldn't say he doesn't want a divorce now, after he initiated it. You really know him well, Grace. I say, my words dripping with irony because I know full well that Grace doesn't understand his feelings at all. Yeah, that's right. Oscar nods in a shaky voice. At this point, there's no escaping. The in-laws' eyes are fixed on him, making sure he doesn't back out. So, without rushing him, I wait for him to fill out the divorce papers. Oscar, just sign it already. There's no need to spend another moment with such an ungrateful woman. Kick her out and start living with just the family. You need to hurry up with the new house too, or someone else might take it. Marshall urges. Even after deciding on our divorce, Oscar and his parents prepared for moving into the new house. Especially the in-laws, they were so eager to live in that house. They had even spoken to the real estate agent about buying it. The house's ownership will likely be in Oscar's name. The in-laws, already living on pensions, certainly can't afford to pay a mortgage. From now on, Oscar will have to support his parents all by himself. Marshall's right. Once Oscar signs, it's all over. You can get rid of a wife who wouldn't become a housewife and was too absorbed in her work. So hurry up and sign. I press, growing impatient with the delay. Oscar hesitates, but when Marshall adds pressure with a stern Oscar, he can't resist and shakily signs the divorce papers.
Now we can kick out an outsider,
Grace says, smiling happily at the fully filled out divorce papers. Marshall praises Oscar, well done, but his face remains pale throughout. I understand why he looks so troubled. The in-laws may be pleased with my divorce from him, but the truth is, the divorce will put him in a difficult situation. At that moment, Oscar had uttered the word divorce in a burst of impulse, never truly intending to go through with it. It was meant only as a threat to me. He probably never imagined I would take the divorce talk seriously. And yet, here we are, with the divorce papers signed, and he is overwhelmed with uncertainty about the future. However, his parents, oblivious to these circumstances, kept pressing him to go through with the divorce. Caught between his parents' demands, he had been troubled up to this day. Now that he has signed the divorce papers, we are strangers to each other. The future life of them is of no concern to me. But seeing him, pale-faced and forcing a smile for his parents, looking utterly miserable, I felt a pang of pity. Maybe it's time to give his parents a dose of reality. With that thought, I took action. I pulled out several documents from the cabinet and laid them out in front of his parents. Here are Oscar's pay slips for the last year. It's a good opportunity to face the reality. The documents reveal his earnings over the past year. Seeing them, his parents gasp.
What? Oscar, what's this about? Why is your salary so low?
Indeed, his pay slips show a meager monthly income of around $1,000. It's a very low income. The reason lies in his educational background. He is a high school graduate, and he holds no qualifications. Moreover, he's not the type to concentrate for long periods, struggling to commit to extensive work hours. The jobs available to someone like him are quite limited. The company he's currently working for offers very low compensation. I had repeatedly suggested he change jobs, but perhaps lacking confidence in securing another position, he continually refused the idea. Living on a monthly income of $1,000 is extremely challenging. Fortunately, I was blessed with a good job. Having graduated from university and landed a job at a top company, I'm now in a managerial position. Hence, my salary is more than enough for daily life. You might realize by now, but had we not divorced, I would have been the one to own the new house. Oscar's salary is insufficient for mortgage payments. But with the divorce, I won't be living in that house, so there's no need for me to pay the mortgage. In essence, with a meager salary of $1,000 per month, Oscar will have to cover the mortgage and living expenses on his own. Of course, I'm the owner of the house we're living in now. After leaving the weekly rental apartment, I plan to sell this house and evict Oscar. Oscar himself seemed to realize this at some point. But his parents, oblivious to the dire situation Oscar was in, only continued to put pressure on him.
Oscar, say it's not true. Jessica is lying, right? It's impossible that Oscar has such a low income.
Grace shouted, refusing to accept reality, grabbing Oscar's shoulder in anger. Normally, if parents learn their son is in a terrible situation, they would try to support him. However, Grace, holding on to an overly grand illusion of Oscar, couldn't face the reality I presented and kept imposing her ideals. Marshall, overwhelmed by the stark truth, remained silent. Under the intense scrutiny of his parents, Oscar finally snapped.
Enough already!
And slumped down on the spot. Grace looked at Oscar with concern.
Jessica, please forgive us. We were wrong. I've been thinking these past few days, and no matter how I look at it, we can't live without you. If you're angry about what was said, I'll apologize as many times as it takes. Please, forgive us,
Oscar said, offering a profound apology. His desperate attempt to make me stay almost made me laugh. Seeing my reaction, the in-laws seemed irritated but, recognizing their position, they apologized on the spot. Jessica, please. Don't abandon us. We don't want to see Oscar suffer anymore. We apologize for what we did. So please, reconsider. It's not too late. Grace pleaded, apologizing next to Oscar. Marshall, perhaps influenced by her, also said, please, and apologized. After being ridiculed and subjected to harsh words, this scene of all three apologizing simultaneously was quite a spectacle. I felt a sense of clarity, as if something long lodged in my chest had been cleared. But my resolve was firm. I truly felt that I couldn't forgive these three. Even if I forgave them now, there's no guarantee the same situation wouldn't happen again. Perhaps their behavior could become even worse. And more than anything, I no longer had the desire to continue as a family with them. The urge to be freed from these three and to live my own life was much stronger. That's why, no matter how much they tried to stop me, my decision didn't waver. Sorry, but it's already decided. No matter what you say, I'm going to submit this divorce application. If you really don't like it, let's hire lawyers and discuss it further, I said, taking the divorce papers and returning to my room. After that, I could hear them arguing in the living room, but I ignored it and took the time to rest, preparing for the next day. The following early morning, I left the house with the luggage I had packed in advance. It was fortunate that I didn't have to face Oscar even once. And so, I was freed from these troublesome people. The divorce application was successfully processed. However, what became more contentious was the issue of alimony. I wasn't interested in receiving any alimony, for I was satisfied as long as I can get divorced. But Oscar, perhaps trying to squeeze every penny he could from me, demanded $100,000 in alimony, concocting some plausible reason like my alleged infidelity. Of course, there was no truth to such claims, so his demands didn't stand. I heard from a friend about what happened afterward. Following that incident, Oscar and his parents reportedly had a significant falling out. After I sold the house, Oscar was evicted and had to move in with his parents. But, shocked by the turn of events, he quit his job and started relying on his parents, which infuriated them. Now, he is said to be living alone in an apartment after being kicked out of his parents' house. He seems to be desperately trying to get in touch with me, reaching out to mutual friends haphazardly. It's utterly bothersome, but I have no intention of communicating with him, so I've taken the precaution of asking friends not to share my contact information. Dealing with him has been a headache, but even so, I am happy now. Having severed ties with him and his parents, I've embraced a life of freedom. My current environment, where I can focus entirely on my work, seems to suit me well. After all that has happened, I'm not keen on married life for a while. For the time being, I plan to cherish the time spent with friends and live each day to the fullest. In this long life ahead, I want to live for myself. If you're going to have your ovaries removed, you're not planning to bury a child, right? Since you're no longer needed, can you divorce me? My husband Michael confronted me with divorce papers. What are you talking about? I won't forgive you if this is a joke, in such a situation. Just a few days ago, I was rushed to the hospital with sudden abdominal pain. The diagnosis suggested the possibility of ovarian cancer, and I was admitted for surgery the following day. This is no joke. I've been putting up with this until now. No, the real endurance had been mine. Living with the in-laws and their harassment. Why should I be the one presented with a divorce petition on the day before my surgery? Anger, sadness, despair, a mix of emotions overwhelmed me as I covered my face. Then, to add insult to injury, I heard the voices of the in-laws, Kevin and Stella.
A barren woman should quietly step aside. It's shameful for a woman of your age to cling to a younger husband. These 3 years have been a waste of time for Michael. Please disappear from our lives quickly. Their words cut deep into my heart. Fighting back tears, I managed to steady my trembling right hand with my left and furiously signed my name. All right, this makes us complete strangers. With that, Michael pocketed the divorce papers. As he was leaving, Michael said, "Actually, there's a nice girl at work lately. She's young, cute, and healthy. Ah, it was right not to take the ugly genes from an old hag." I was speechless at his cruel words. Little did I know, meeting Michael again 3 years later would turn out to be quite unexpected. My name is Ava. I married Michael, who is 2 years younger, 2 years ago. We met at work when I was 38, and after his persistent pursuit, we got married. Having given up on marriage, I initially refused his advances. There are plenty of younger women out there. I like someone independent and calm like Ava. I might not be able to have children at 38. I don't want children, I want to be with you, Ava. Despite my objections, Michael insisted I was the only one for him, and I set just one condition for our marriage. Just promise me one thing. I'm not obsessed with having children due to my age. Let's not force ourselves to have children. Michael agreed to this condition, and we got married. Michael, who had always lived with his parents, insisted on continuing to do so after our marriage. I'm an only child, and I'll have to take care of my parents eventually. Why not live with my parents from the start?
Though living with strangers at this age was daunting, I consented to live with his parents, Kevin and Stella, out of gratitude for marrying a leftover like me. However, I quickly realized this decision was a mistake.
Ava will need you to do the shopping, cooking, dishwashing, garbage disposal, and bathroom cleaning.
Why was I the only one expected to do so much when there were 4 adults living in the house? I felt uneasy from the start but couldn't voice my concerns. They seemed to think of me as a housekeeper.
Ava, I want to eat Odin today.
Ava, the entrance is getting dirty, please clean it.
Ava, iron my shirts.
What kind of life had the 3 of them been leading before I arrived? The in-laws' house wasn't dirty, so someone must have been doing the housework until I came. This realization only added to my frustration. Furthermore, the in-laws were overjoyed at the prospect of their only son getting married and expected a grandchild right away. You're nearly 40, you should start infertility treatments soon. No, we're fine without children.
What are you saying? There's no point in marrying if you're not going to have children.
The in-laws couldn't understand our choice not to have children.
Well, we're not young anymore, so we decided not to be too nervous about having children,
Michael said, trying to convince his parents at first. But the in-laws were persistent. No matter how much Michael tried to persuade them, the question of when we were going to have a grandchild would resurface after a few days. One day, Michael came into the room, red-faced.
Mom said I should get checked at the hospital because it might be my fault you're not getting pregnant.
Feeling wounded in his male pride, Michael started taking it out on me. It's not my fault, is it? Michael is just hurting himself. Of course, I didn't say it out loud, but my dissatisfaction grew day by day.
We're proving it's your fault we can't have kids. We're going to the doctor.
Eventually, Michael said something like that. However, I had no intention of undergoing fertility treatments, so naturally, I ignored what he said and lied about being too busy with work to escape from my in-laws' house. I'm home. Listen, Mom. The only saving grace was that my parents' house was near my office. Before going home, I'd stop by my parents' house to vent my frustrations. There, my loving parents, Thomas and Olivia, who had already retired and were enjoying their later years, were waiting for me. I wonder how they felt about their daughter, who got married close to 40, exploding with complaints about her in-laws and husband so soon after getting married. At first, I felt sorry for my parents, but they listened to my complaints as if they were a snack to accompany their drinks.
Ava, what's wrong today? We got some nice liquor from the neighbor, let's drink together.
Perhaps it was because my parents took it so lightly that I was able to complain. Why does everyone think marriage equals children? Plus, pregnancy and childbirth are all tough on women. And then to have the husband's parents complain.
People are just set in their ways. Especially as they get older. I'm told I've softened with age.
Dad has mellowed with age, hasn't he? Maybe Michael will turn out like Dad? With time, this situation will probably become a laughing matter. Just like this, my parents always encouraged me. Having my parents on my side always gave me strength, and I was somehow able to continue my marriage. Then one day, on my way home from work, I suddenly felt severe pain in my lower abdomen. What's this pain? Cold sweat broke out due to the pain, and I couldn't stand, sitting down on the sidewalk. I tried to search for my mobile phone to call for help, but my hands were shaking so much from the pain that I couldn't properly search for it. Fortunately, a passerby noticed and called an ambulance for me. At the hospital, after various tests, I was told there was a possibility of ovarian cancer.
Could you contact your family immediately?
Asked by the nurse, I called Michael. It was past 7 p.m., and Michael should have been home, but he didn't answer the phone no matter how many times I tried. Reluctantly, I called Mom.
I'll be there right away. You'll be okay, Ava.
Mom encouraged me and soon arrived at the hospital with Dad. Tears streamed down my face the moment I saw my parents. I wasn't strong enough to face cancer alone after turning 40. Mom gently stroked my back. With my parents, I listened to the doctor about my condition.
The right ovary is highly likely to be cancerous. We recommend the removal of both ovaries and the uterus. Does that mean I won't be able to get pregnant?
Yes. Are you hoping to get pregnant, Ava?
I
hesitated. Honestly, at 41, I wasn't that desperate to have children. But, given the pressure for children from the in-laws and Michael, I felt a moment of resistance to making my body unable to bear children.
Is there another treatment option if I wanted to get pregnant?
I asked timidly. You have to think about your body first. My parents looked worried. The doctor quietly said to me,
There are options, but further tests are needed to see if they're applicable to Ava.
My parents were probably surprised I was still concerned about getting pregnant. I was surprised myself. I couldn't quite express my feelings, but the thought of having both of my ovaries and my uterus removed without ever having had children made me feel indescribably empty. Maybe if I don't give up and keep trying, Michael, Kevin, Stella might change their minds about me. That thought crossed my mind. I can't completely give up on getting pregnant. Can you leave one ovary? The doctor looked into my eyes and nodded. I understand how you feel, Ava. However, depending on the progress, there might still be a need to remove everything. As a result of the discussion with the doctor, surgery to remove my right ovary, the site of the tumor, was scheduled for 5 days later. If the tumor was confined to the right ovary, we would see how it goes with the addition of chemotherapy.
If there's any spread, you must give up on pregnancy for good.
The doctor emphasized, and I nodded firmly. Thankfully, my parents quietly supported me without saying anything about my decision. Mom came to the hospital every day, taking care of me when I was feeling down. Did Michael get in touch? No. He doesn't answer the phone, and he hasn't responded to my messages about being hospitalized. I don't understand what's going on with Michael. My parents were silent, seemingly not having realized how much their daughter's marriage had deteriorated.
Maybe he's just busy. Dad and Mom have plenty of time, so don't worry about things like laundry. Oh, I'll buy your favorite pears later.
Mom tried to keep my spirits up by being cheerfully supportive. I was deeply moved by my parents' warmth. I decided to do my best in the surgery for my parents as well. Just then, Michael and the in-laws entered my hospital room. It was the day before the surgery. I glared at the three of them.
Why are you ignoring my calls and messages?
Michael casually responded. Seems like you've been through a lot. Good job. Expecting him to apologize for not contacting me, I was speechless. Why can he speak so indifferently about his wife undergoing surgery? Anger welled up inside me, and I glared at them even more. Seeing my reaction, the three of them exchanged some words, then looked at me with a disdainful smile.
Leave! I don't want to see your faces!
Unable to hold back, I yelled at them, forgetting we were in a hospital. Then Michael walked up to me and thrust a piece of paper at me. If you're going to have your ovaries removed, you can't have kids, right? Since you're useless to me now, will you divorce me? The paper Michael thrust at me was a divorce petition.
What are you talking about? I won't forgive you for joking about this in such a situation.
It's no joke. I've been putting up with this until now. No, I've been the one putting up with everything. Why should I be the one presented with a divorce petition? On the day before my surgery, anger, sadness, despair, a mix of emotions overwhelmed me as I covered my face. Then, to add insult to injury, the in-laws spoke up. A barren woman should quietly step aside.
It's shameful for a woman of your age to cling to a younger husband. These 3 years have been a waste of Michael's time. Please disappear from our sight quickly.
Their words cut deep into my heart. Choosing a treatment that left open the possibility of pregnancy for their sake now seemed foolish. What is this treatment? Stunned, Michael left the divorce petition and a pen on the bedside table.
Just sign your name, and it's all done. Be thankful I'm handling this for you.
Saying so, Michael forced a pen into my right hand. I wasn't opposed to divorcing per se. In fact, I couldn't bear the thought of living with the in-laws and enduring their snide remarks until we had a child. But I had endured their tyranny for these 3 years. I endured it because they were family. They must have seen me only as a childbearing machine. The resentment towards the 3 who didn't offer support but instead presented me with divorce while I was facing surgery was immense. I bit my lip, holding back tears, and with trembling hands supported by my left, I wrote my name.
All right, this makes us complete strangers.
With that, Michael pocketed the divorce petition. The 3 of them left the room with satisfied looks. At the last moment, Michael turned back and said,
Actually, there's a nice young girl at work. She's young, cute, and healthy. She doesn't have a single thing in common with you. Ah, I was right not to inherit ugly genes from an old hag.
Glaring at Michael, he said,
Good thing I divorced the old hag.
And left with a smirk. The only sound in the quiet room was my sniffles. Michael and his family had pushed me, already overwhelmed by illness and fear, further down into despair. I buried my face in the blanket and cried. After some time, there was a knock at the door. I hurriedly covered my face with the blanket and pretended to be asleep.
Ava, you're sleeping, huh?
I peeled some pears for you, eat them later. The voice belonged to Mom, who always entered without knocking. She quietly came in and placed a container of pears on the table.
I'll move all your stuff to our house today. After you're discharged, maybe you can help with the laundry. Oh, and Dad has started cooking. Look forward to Dad's cooking. I'll come back tomorrow morning.
As Mom gently stroked the top of my head peeking out from the blanket, she quickly left the hospital room. It seemed like she knew everything without needing to say a word. Perhaps she had overheard the divorce conversation with Michael and the others outside the room. Feeling the infinite kindness and warmth of Mom, I found myself tearing up again. After a good cry, I lifted my face. The pear was cut into bite-sized pieces for easy eating.
Mom, thank you.
As I bit into the pear, the smiling faces of my parents came to mind. I need to get better soon to repay Dad and Mom. I decided to work hard on my treatment, with the goal of giving my parents peace of mind. The next day, I underwent surgery to remove my right ovary. It turned out to be cancerous as feared, but fortunately, the left ovary was normal. Next, I would undergo chemotherapy to target the unseen cells. The first round of chemotherapy was tough due to the medication not agreeing with me and the strong side effects. I couldn't eat anything, and as my hair fell out, I could see myself getting thinner. But my parents were always there to encourage me.
Yesterday, we saw the meteor shower you like. Dad found 5 shooting stars. We made wishes, so you're definitely going to get better.
Thinking about Dad, who normally wouldn't care about shooting stars, getting up in the middle of the night to watch the sky, filled me with a sense of his love and the warmth of family. Thanks to them, I was able to keep a strong resolve to fight for their sake. My hospital stay ended after 6 months, and I switched to outpatient treatment.
If nobody uses it, it just collects dust. It's good that Ava is coming back.
My parents didn't ask about the divorce. They simply brought me home as if it was the most natural thing. I couldn't return to society immediately and spent some time recuperating at home. Supported by my parents, I gradually began to recover my former self. And then, the second year after my surgery began. Before I got sick, I always lazed around on holidays, but after experiencing cancer, I made sure to live a regular, healthy life.
That was a good walk.
As I finished my usual morning walk and was about to enter the house, the mailman arrived and handed me a delivery. It was a letter with a baby's photo attached. The name on it was surprisingly Michael's. While I was fighting my illness, the man who left me had found happiness and even had the child his in-laws wished for. I wondered what he intended by letting me know this fact. Seeing the letter didn't make me feel good, but Michael was already a stranger to me. There was no need to waste my nerves on a stranger. I decided to move on. I knew my parents would be upset if they found the New Year's card. So as soon as I entered the house, I tore it up and threw it in the trash, making sure they would never know. I then managed to return to work. Since my parents' house was close to the company, I could commute without overexerting myself.
How was the healthy sandwich?
It was delicious. Thank you as always. Every day, Dad prepared a nutritionally balanced sandwich for me. This touched since this was something he had never done when I lived at home.
Dad, you're really good at cooking. Did you always know how to cook?
I whispered to Mom, who shook her head.
Dad got excited about making Ava's sandwiches. He improved his cooking skills over the last few months.
Watching Dad happily make sandwiches while humming, I could tell he was truly happy to see me well. Parents always give their children unconditional love, no matter their age. I wished I could be a parent who gives unconditional love like them. That thought made me smile. Having one ovary left didn't matter since I was still single. But I needed to stay healthy for my parents. And I promised myself to repay them one day. I have decided once again. Then, one day, Michael and the in-laws suddenly appeared in front of me. They were waiting for me to return from work in front of my parents' house.
Ava.
Michael murmured my name as they all apologized profusely without caring about the onlookers.
I was wrong. I want to start over.
What is he talking about now? Especially since Michael already had a child. I was furious with Michael for his irresponsibility and the in-laws who followed him like fish droppings, apologizing together. As I glared at them silently, Michael began to explain.
I was deceived.
According to Michael, he married the young woman from his workplace right after divorcing me. Because she was already pregnant. Knowing now that he had cheated on me while we were still married made me upset, even after all this time. Then, just like the letter said, they had a son and were supposedly living a happy life until it was discovered that Michael's current wife was having an affair with another man. Michael became suspicious when she always stepped outside to take calls and never let her mobile phone out of her sight. He decided to hire a detective, and that's when he found out. Even more shocking was that the son he believed was his turned out to be the child of his wife's lover. When confronted, his wife casually admitted to the affair and the truth about the child. Laughing, she said, "Obviously, I'd choose his genes over yours. Who would want the genes of an ugly old man like you?"
That sounds familiar.
I muttered, and Michael hung his head.
I really am sorry. I've only just realized how terribly we treated you.
Following Michael's lead, the in-laws also apologized. "We won't say anything about the child anymore," Can't we start over? Dad and Mom are sorry, too. What convenient people they are. After everything they did, I couldn't understand how they had the nerve to appear before me so casually, and I didn't feel like talking to them. Then, alerted by the commotion at the entrance, a man and my parents came out of the house at just the right moment. Guests? What are you doing here? Mom raised her voice upon seeing Michael and the others apologizing in front of me. The man behind my parents was taken aback by Mom's reaction, but then quickly came to my side.
Please stay away from my wife.
Then, my new husband Brian stood protectively in front of me, facing Michael and the others. Michael and his party were dumbfounded.
My wife? What do you mean, Ava? This is a joke, right? Why would you think it's a joke?
I retorted, seizing the moment to fight back. Sorry, but I'm married to him now.
Thanks to you insisting on that divorce, I found someone who loves me for who I am, not as a childbearing machine.
I wrapped my arm around the man beside me to show him off to Michael and the others. He was a colleague from work who had taken on my responsibilities while I was off sick. After returning to work, he helped me manage my workload so I wouldn't overdo it, and gradually, we spent more and more time together.
Being with Ava makes me realize the small joys in life. Will you marry me?
He proposed, accepting me for who I am, and we got married 6 months ago.
Wait, your stomach! Are you pregnant?
At that moment, Michael's mother screamed upon noticing my noticeably larger abdomen. Michael looked at my stomach and frowned deeply at me.
You said you were getting your ovaries removed. Did you lie to me? How low can you get, lying like that? Enjoy playing the victim?
The in-laws joined in, berating me just like before.
Weren't you the ones who demanded a divorce without listening to my side? You wanted children so much, I decided to keep one ovary just in case there was a chance of pregnancy, but you never listened, did you?
Anger from the past surged within me. Feeling my rage, he stroked my back to calm me down.
My wife has endured harsh chemotherapy and is still fighting hard with the remaining ovary. Please, never come near my precious wife again. If you break this promise, we will take legal action.
His firm stance left them with nothing to say, and they backed off.
We thought we'd do you a favor by offering to keep you as a housekeeper since you're alone. Well, suffer through your high-risk pregnancy then.
Michael left with a parting shot, retreating with the in-laws. My parents rushed over to me. Ava, are you all right?
I swear. If they show up again, they won't get off so easily.
My parents, who had seen me through the tough times, were filled with anger. I will always protect you, so please don't worry. His strong words finally eased me and my parents. Later, Mom heard that Michael had also made his new wife live with the in-laws, just like me. I had thought that Michael and his family were completely deceived by his new wife, but it turns out that wasn't entirely the case. They had disregarded me because I couldn't get pregnant, or so they believed. So, I imagined Michael must have been very kind to his pregnant new wife, but it seems that wasn't the case at all. They didn't take care of her despite her pregnancy, making her do household chores and carry heavy things without concern. Some neighbors, seeing her buying groceries for a family of 4 with her large belly, were so worried they helped carry her bags. Of course, the woman who cheated with Michael and bore the child of her affair was also at fault. But no one could make her feel guilty given how much Michael and his parents exploited her. Michael and his parents made their marriage partners live with them as housekeepers twice, only to divorce them shortly after. This bad reputation spread in the neighborhood, and nobody wanted to associate with Michael's family anymore. Still, they continued looking for a wife to take care of them, but as soon as Michael brought a woman home, neighbors would warn her about their reputation. Thanks to this, no woman became their victim again, and the three of them now live a meager life under the strange gazes of the neighborhood.
Was their house always full of trash before Ava married in?
No, they kept it fairly clean. I guess without a wife, Stella must manage the household well. I see. Mom nodded, understanding. Lately, Stella hasn't been well, probably due to her age. While Michael works, he has to take care of Stella, but with just the two men, the house has recently become neglected. They only have themselves to blame. They have to figure it out as a family of three, blood-related. They need to deeply reflect on how they've mistreated their marriage partners.
Mom, I'm home.
Just then, my daughter and husband returned.
Welcome back, we've been waiting. Let's play with Grandma.
Seeing Mom, my daughter rushed into her arms with the brightest smile. My daughter turned 2 this year. When she was born, my husband and parents cried and thanked me. There were times I doubted why I chose to keep one ovary for treatment, feeling guilty towards my quietly supportive parents. But now, I have no regrets. Because I have such a wonderful family. After giving birth, our family of 3 started living in an apartment close to my parents' house. My parents would come over with extra dishes they made or vegetables they received, always finding reasons to visit. Though I've resigned myself to the fact that having another child at my age is unlikely, my daughter never feels lonely because my parents are always there to play with her, which has been a great help to me.
Grandma's joining us for dinner, right? Is that okay, Ava?
Of course, invite Dad too.
Thank you. Dad said he's bringing some pears from the fridge.
Our ordinary, warm conversations filled the air. Harassment, divorce, illness. I've hit rock bottom at times, but thanks to my parents and my current husband, I'm living happily. And my daughter, who came into my life when I had almost given up on pouring unconditional love like Dad and Mom, has made my life shine brighter.
Mom, here, take this.
My daughter placed an acorn she picked up in the park into my palm.
Wow, thank you. I'll treasure it.
I hugged my daughter. Together as a family, caring for each other, we want to continue cherishing the small joys of life.
What happened to you, all covered in blood?
I screamed when my 10th grade daughter, who was supposed to have gone to my husband's hometown, came home with blood streaming down her forehead. After rushing to tend to her, I immediately contacted my husband. Then, when he answered the phone, I couldn't help but yell at him.
Where are you?
I told you I'm on a business trip, didn't I? I was dumbfounded by his unexpected reply. Because I clearly remember seeing off my husband and daughter for their trip to his hometown 5 days ago. There in front of me was my child, seriously injured. Seeing my confusion, my daughter revealed a shocking truth. My name is Camelia, a 40-year-old housewife, working part-time. My husband Bruno, also 40, is a salesman who visits various schools to sell high school textbooks. Trust is important, he says, and his neatly composed demeanor is just so cool. Our daughter Laura just entered the 10th grade this fall. She used to be so clingy to me, but now, she's so responsible that she's often cooking dinner by the time I get back from my part-time job. Bruno, Laura, and I were living a peaceful life until my mother became bedridden due to an internal illness 5 years ago. Since then, I've been busy juggling caregiving and part-time work. I haven't been able to visit my in-laws much since my mother fell ill, even missing Thanksgiving greetings. But during those times, Bruno would say, "Don't push yourself. Isn't it great to have an understanding husband?" And go back to his parents' home alone, joking and laughing. I felt terrible, but with my hands full caring for my mother, I was grateful for his understanding. However, 3 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away suddenly in an accident. My father-in-law, John, was so heartbroken, as they were very close, and Bruno's trips back home became more frequent. Moreover, Bruno would say things like,
I want to take Dad on a trip to cheer him up.
Or,
I want to treat him to a delicious steak.
resulting in expenses increasing with each visit, $300, $500. But, as I had been neglecting my visits to my in-laws to care for my own mother, I couldn't really complain about the money. Then one day, as usual, Bruno mentioned the expenses for his next trip home. The next time I go back to my place, it's going to cost $1,000.
What?
I couldn't help but wonder if Bruno really needed such a large sum of money for a single trip home, but he never explained the details of the expenses. I guess it must be necessary, if I think of it as showing gratitude to John. I convinced myself with that thought. However, due to the sudden expense, I had no choice but to temporarily withdraw money from the account I had been saving for Lara's education. I'll have to cut back on trips to the beauty salon for a while and make sure not to dip into Lara's savings. From then on, I worked hard to save money and gradually replenish my daughter's account. While living these frugal days, Lara successfully completed her school applications. Just when things seemed to be settling down, I want to see my granddaughter. It's been a while, John said.
All right. Let's take Lara and Dad out for steak as a reward for always working hard. Really? Yay!
Seeing Lara's beaming smile. Thank you for always being so patient, I said, stroking her head. She had never complained, despite always having to make sacrifices and helping with my mother's care. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Then, on the morning of the day they were to visit Bruno's parents, Lara cheerfully waved.
I'll bring back some souvenirs,
she said.
Have fun,
I replied with a smile. Everyone in the family was smiling. Little did we know then what was about to happen. It was around noon, 5 days after Bruno and Lara left for his parents' house. I was preparing lunch in the kitchen when I heard the entrance door open. Who is it, coming in without ringing the bell? Startled, I called out,
Hello!
And headed to the entrance, only to find Lara standing there with blood streaming down her forehead.
What happened?
I screamed, almost like a cry, and looked around for Bruno, but he was nowhere to be seen. Trembling, I let my trembling daughter into the house and immediately called Bruno.
Where are you?
I'm at work. I told you I went on a business trip the day after I took Lara to my parents' place. I was utterly confused, as I hadn't heard anything about his work.
I didn't know about any trip, and more importantly, Lara has come back seriously injured.
It's probably just a fall. Girls her age tend to exaggerate. Don't take it seriously. Bye. Bruno hastily said just that and hung up forcibly. I could never just accept such an absurd story from him. Oh, really? While tending to my daughter. Why did you get hurt? Did Dad go to work? I asked. Lara, with a pale face and trembling lips, finally murmured. Dad pushed me. I was shocked, but gently rubbed her back and listened to her story. Then, an unbelievable truth came to light. Bruno had been keeping secrets from us, and he had inflicted a serious injury on Lara after she discovered them. And that wasn't all. He had threatened Lara.
If you tell anyone about this, next time it won't just be an injury,
he said. John returned from an outing just as Bruno hesitated, allowing Lara to escape from her in-laws' house. Fortunately, Lara had some money with her, enabling her to take the bus alone. But I can only imagine how anxious she must have been, hiding her injuries and making her way back here. I will never forgive anyone who hurts my sweet daughter. I swore revenge, not only for Bruno raising his hand against our daughter but also for the secrets he kept from us. After hearing about Bruno's misdeeds, I reached for my mobile phone to call John. And was surprised to see a mountain of missed calls from him. Oh, John, I'm sorry. I was cooking and didn't notice the phone. No, it's fine. More importantly, Lara had to rush back home for some urgent matter. I was worried if she made it back safely, that's why I called so many times. Hearing John's words, I was speechless. Bruno had concocted such a lie to cover up the fact that his injured daughter had fled back home. I then spilled everything to John, who was unaware of the situation, about what I learned from Laura.
Laura will be okay. I'm taking her to the hospital. But I can't forgive Bruno. Could you please keep him at your house for a while so I can deal with him?
John replied. Of course. And promised to help. He agreed to cunningly persuade Bruno to stay at his parents' house for a while. In the meantime, I ran around making various preparations for confronting Bruno. 5 days later. After finishing the investigation into Bruno's secrets, I was heading to his parents' house. Just as I was about to ring the entrance doorbell, I saw Laura running towards me, out of breath.
Mom. Wait. I told you to stay at home. I can't just sit there. He needs to take responsibility for my injury.
I had planned to confront Bruno alone at his parents' house, not wanting Laura to witness a conflict between her parents. However, Laura clearly had no intention of staying quiet.
I think I have a right to speak up too.
She was adamant. Reluctantly, I accepted Laura's anger and decided to face the situation together. We were greeted by John, who already knew our plan, and upon entering the living room, we saw Bruno, seemingly just woken up, lounging in his pajamas and watching TV, despite it being midday.
Oh, I thought you were on a business trip.
Surprised by my sudden voice, Bruno sprang up.
Well, I was supposed to go, but then it got cancelled unexpectedly.
Bruno began to stammer out a lame excuse.
But never mind that. What about Lara's injury? I want to hear about it.
Oh, the clumsy girl. She apparently fell down the stairs and hit her forehead. I almost yelled at Bruno for his blatant evasion, but John beat me to it.
Enough. I know that Lara's injury is your fault.
Laura added.
Yes. That's right.
And I glared at Bruno. Realizing he was in a tough spot, Bruno suddenly looked smug and retorted.
You never showed your face at my parents' place, and now you act all high and mighty. I've been the one doing the filial duties for both of us.
Bruno sneered, thinking I had no comeback. Indeed, until now. I had thought he was right and had kept quiet. But after hearing Laura's story, I knew all too well that Bruno's words were full of lies.
Oh really? Is leaving your father alone at home and making Laura do all the housework your idea of filial piety? That's right! Since you brought me here, you've just been relaxing at home. Shut up. This was just a one-time thing. Usually, it's me who does all the hard work.
As Bruno arrogantly boasted, I took out John's household ledger, which I had been given beforehand. It detailed not only the financial transactions, but also how Bruno spent his time at his parents' house.
Let me read some of it to you.
June 10th, gave Bruno $200 for transportation. He lounged around all day and went out at night as usual, returning in the morning. Food expenses increased due to Bruno's stay. I calmly read out the entries. According to the ledger, every time Bruno visited.
My wife won't even give me money for the trip.
He lied, claiming that he receives money from John. Taking advantage of my absence, Bruno portrayed me as a stingy and scary wife to gain sympathy from his father.
A grown man, still leeching off his parents, aren't you ashamed? And they even take care of various things for you. You always come over and I feel bad, thinking you're not getting any pocket money from your wife, so I try to help out. But it was all lies, wasn't it?
Bruno, cornered by our accusations, fell silent and didn't respond.
Swindling money from your father, what exactly did you use it for?
Well,
no need to say anything. You're probably just thinking up more lies.
Ignoring Bruno's muttering, I thrust a certain photograph in front of him.
You wanted money so badly because you were splurging at places like this. How do you know about this place?
The photo showed Bruno entering a dubious nightclub. Bruno's face drained of color, clearly not expecting me to know this much. Indeed, the secret Laura had discovered during the visit was about this very matter. Laura had thought Bruno was diligently taking care of John, but when she noticed his repeated late-night returns, she became suspicious and started her own investigation. She secretly installed a location tracking app on Bruno's mobile phone and, after he left, used her computer to check his whereabouts, always showing the same place. When Laura researched it on the internet, she discovered it was a night spot catering to men. While she was about to call and inform me, Bruno returned home. He became furious upon finding Laura checking his location and the club on her computer and pushed her, causing her to hit her head on the edge of a shelf and bleed. You know the rest. After hearing Laura's story, I left my mother in professional care for a few days and staked out the club to gather evidence of Bruno's escapades, capturing photos of him entering the establishment. When I saw Bruno enter the club so lightheartedly, the shock I felt was indescribable. And to think, the money for this recent trip home, though temporarily, was taken from Laura's college fund.
Dad, you're the worst.
Feeling awkward with the undeniable evidence of the photos, Bruno muttered, "Isn't this normal for men?" and looked up at John, seeking agreement.
What are you talking about? Dipping into your child's college fund for nightlife is despicable. I'm tired from work. A little fun should be okay.
Laura sighed in disbelief at Bruno's brazenness.
Mom, do you know what kind of place that is? Eh? No, I just took the photos and left immediately.
I thought so. Here, take a look. Laura said and spread out several printouts of the club's website on the table. John and I leaned over to see the girls in the club dressed in school uniforms. All appeared to be adults, but it was clear the establishment specialized in this kind of cosplay service. Oh. To expose our daughter to such a world. I was filled with remorse, but Laura seemed unfazed.
So Dad likes this kind of stuff.
Gross. She shuddered as if chilled while thrusting the papers at Bruno.
You don't have to go that far.
Having a fetish for uniforms could be a big problem if your school clients find out, right? I doubt your company, which sells educational materials to schools, would continue employing someone with such hobbies.
As I gave him a cold gaze, Bruno turned pale.
Oh, right.
I quickly pulled out Bruno's schedule book, which I had found left in his business bag.
Looking at this, I now know all the schools you've been visiting. Maybe I should contact these clients about your wonderful hobby. Please, not that. I'm sorry. I went too far. I'll change, I promise.
Bruno must have realized there was no escaping the situation. He started to tremble and collapsed onto the floor. Despite his apologies, years of his club visits and extravagance, culminating in injuring Laura, were unforgivable.
Who's going to believe the words of a liar like you? I've already consulted a lawyer and am ready for divorce. You'll pay back every penny you squandered, plus compensation. This is the end for us. No, please.
Bruno tried to cling to Laura, but she recoiled.
Yuck. Get away from me.
And eventually, wah. He broke down crying. We watched his pathetic state with cold indifference. Shortly after, the divorce was finalized, and Bruno was ordered to pay back the $15,000 he had squandered plus $30,000 in damages. Somehow, his club visits were leaked, resulting in his termination from his job. John cut ties with him, and now Bruno lives alone in an old apartment, barely getting by with day jobs. Unable to pay the damages, he had to borrow money from dubious lenders and now lives in fear of debt collectors. Meanwhile, after the divorce, I had more time to myself. With Laura's help, my mother's health improved significantly, and she no longer needed constant care. Now, the three of us women live together, enjoying a happy and harmonious life.
I washed your baby in the washing machine.
My assailant burst into laughter the moment she saw my face. She had always disliked me, so she must have been waiting for this opportunity. But I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in response.
My daughter is sleeping right next to me.
My Sael Janice looked utterly shocked at first, then turned pale as she watched our daughter Kyrie sleeping soundly. This story is about a major family incident involving all our relatives, which happened one Christmas. My name is Patrice, a 35-year-old homemaker. I married Bryant, who is 5 years younger, and after about 7 years, we were finally blessed with a child when I turned 35. Our daughter Kyrie, now 8 months old, is a lively baby who loves her milk and sleeps well. As an older mother, I was relieved, but there were still challenges to face. One of them was my Sael, Janice, who is 10 years younger than me. She disliked me for marrying her brother and constantly harassed me whenever she got the chance. Janice's attachment and love for her brother Bryant were intense, something you might call a brother complex. I don't have siblings, so I can't fully understand, but I find it bizarre that at 25, she still wants to shower with her biological brother. Bryant always brushed it off as a joke, but I couldn't make sense of it. She looked down on me for being an older wife and for having a child late in life. When Bryant wasn't around, she would invariably taunt me, saying, "How did an old lady like you manage to trick my brother?" I'm just curious, for future reference. Janice, I don't think that's an appropriate way to speak, but...
Shut up. You're getting too cocky just because you're acting submissive. It's disgusting that an old lady like you stole my brother and then got pregnant.
Could you please keep it down? The baby might wake up. I held back a sigh and deliberately spoke to Janice in polite, respectful language. After all, she was constantly at our house, clinging to Bryant and trying to follow him every time he left his seat, which also troubled him. Moreover, she would ring the doorbell early in the morning and not leave until late at night. Eventually, she started acting childishly, saying, "I'm going to stay over at my brother's place." Bryant had his hands full just trying to send her home. Good grief, Janice is such a handful. Honey, I have something I want to ask you about her. I cautiously asked Bryant if he was aware of Janice's terrible behavior. His response was, "I had no idea, this is news to me." Bryant was surprised by what I told him. It all made sense now. Janice had been pretending to be nice in front of her brother and waited for him to leave to insult me. Remembering how Janice used to cling to Bryant, acting as if she were his real girlfriend, made me feel sick to my stomach. Bryant found it hard to believe, but I told him the facts as they were. Even after that, Janice continued her usual behavior.
"Let's go take a shower together, big brother."
Trying to drag him into the bathroom. But after hearing my story, Bryant began to reject her advances. "Look, Janice, we're adults now. Taking a shower together isn't appropriate." I know it's weird. Janice didn't miss my muttered comment. Right after watching Bryant head for the shower, she turned to me and suddenly punched me in the stomach.
Oof!
I couldn't contain the pain and crouched down on the floor.
"It's your fault. You must have put some ideas into my brother's head."
Then she relentlessly kicked my back as I was clutching my stomach.
"Get lost already!"
As the time approached for Bryant to usually come out of the shower, Janice forcibly made me stand up and pushed me onto the sofa.
"Listen, if you tell my brother about this, I'll make you suffer even more."
Groaning in pain, I was completely overwhelmed by Janice's violent behavior. What's worse, her anger, initially directed at me, gradually shifted to someone else. It happened one day when Bryant was about to take Kyrie into the shower.
"I'll help you, big brother. Maybe I'll take a shower too."
Janice was fully intent on joining them, heading towards the bathroom. Knowing I had to stop this, I opened my mouth, but Bryant looked fed up. "Janice, I've told you before, I'm not showering with you. I have a wife and a daughter, so it's time for you to move on from me."
No. Why are you being so mean?"
Ignoring her tantrum, Bryant quickly picked up Kyrie and headed for the shower. This scene repeated several times, with Janice being rejected by him each time, gradually shifting her anger from me to Kyrie. She couldn't stand the thought of the baby showering with Bryant, her brother, while she was rejected. That's probably what she felt. Soon, Janice would cause a terrible incident. One Christmas, our family was invited to my in-laws, where we gathered with relatives. Naturally, Janice was there too, and I had a bad feeling about it. However, in front of the relatives, Janice's true colors were never revealed, and surprisingly, she was quite well behaved. Despite her usual disdain for me, she approached me with a smile and acted friendly.
But honestly, it's kind of creepy. There's no way she would suddenly be nice to me.
I decided to avoid Janice as much as possible and went to where the children of our relatives were gathered. There, over 10 children and babies were huddled together, holding on to their allowances and toys given by the relatives. I approached a relative, Opal, who was there. "Opal, thanks again for the baby clothes. How about we take a picture of our 2 kids?" She had given me matching baby clothes for my daughter and hers as a birth gift, so I had dressed Kyrie in them for the visit. We both had a great time taking photos of the children with our mobile phones. Eventually, the kids decided to play in the snow-covered garden. They were quickly covered in snow. And even a nearby baby got splashed with it. That's when Janice was asked by a relative to help wash the children in the shower. She grimaced for a moment, but then, surprisingly,
All right. Come on, everyone, follow me.
She picked up a baby with a smile and led the children away. However, with over 10 kids, they formed a long line following Janice.
Oh no, Kyrie got left behind.
Janice seemed not to notice, and Kyrie was sitting there with snow on her clothes. I was about to take Kyrie to the shower, but she started crying, probably wanting milk. Oh, there. Maybe I should give her milk first. I wanted to wash the gifted baby clothes right away, but after feeding her, Kyrie fell asleep, making it difficult to undress her. Reluctantly, I let it go, laid Kyrie beside me, and enjoyed chatting with the relatives. Then, Janice appeared with a triumphant look on her face.
Ahaha. I washed your baby in the washing machine. That'll show you.
Excuse me. I couldn't understand what she was talking about. What did she mean by washing a child in a washing machine?
Kyrie is sleeping right next to me.
What? Janice looked confused as well, seeing Kyrie sleeping soundly. We were both unclear about what was happening. Suddenly, a scream came from the bathroom. Janice and I rushed there, and we found Opal in a complete panic.
Opal, calm down. What happened?
Opal claimed that when she opened the washing machine, she found a baby inside. And that baby was her daughter. Her voice, crying and holding her child, attracted more and more relatives. Seizing the moment, Janice pointed at me.
Patrice! How could you?
What are you talking about? As soon as Janice shouted, all eyes turned to me, and I was taken aback. Then, the relatives started to confront me.
Patrice, we need to hear your side of the story.
Taking advantage of this distraction, I saw Janice sneaking out of the house.
Wait! Janice!
In this desperate moment, Brian's sharp voice rang out.
This is not the time for accusations. We need to get to the hospital right away.
Bryant immediately called the paramedics, and Opal and her husband, with the baby, boarded the ambulance and headed to the hospital. Left at the in-laws' house, surrounded by relatives, I seethed with anger at Janice for trying to pin this on me even in such a situation. I'll make sure she pays for this. She better be ready. I decided to explain all of Janice's misdeeds to the relatives and asked for their cooperation in punishing her. After returning from the hospital, Opal and her husband, furious after hearing everything, agreed to participate in the plan. I asked Bryant to lure Janice back to the in-laws' house with a phone call.
Janice, Patrice admitted her guilt. I can't believe she would do something so horrible.
Eh? Oh, really?
So, I want to hear more about it. You ran away because you feared Patrice's grudge, right? I'll protect you, so please come back and help us uncover the truth.
Comforted by her brother's kind words, Janice naively returned to the in-laws' house. However, the house was in a state of mourning. Opal, in tears, "My daughter has passed away," she announced to the remaining relatives. While everyone was engulfed in sorrow, Janice was the only one looking smug. "Ah, it's all Patrice's fault. What are you going to do about this? How will you make amends?" Joining in Janice's sneering attitude. "How could you do something like this, Patrice? What grudge did you have against Opal?" The other relatives started accusing me. "I'm so sorry. I had to. Janice was after Bryant, so I thought of framing her for the incident with the children in the shower." As I began to break down in tears, Janice started to panic. What? Me, after my brother? How could you make up such a lie? Is there any proof? So, I said, "Actually," and showed Janice and the relatives the screen of my mobile phone. It was a recording of our home's laundry room, focusing on the washing machine. Janice could be seen taking Brian's underwear from the laundry, sniffing it, and then hiding it in her pocket. She had been stealing her own brother's underwear every time she visited our house. "Janice, what are you doing? I thought it was strange that I've been losing underwear recently." "Wait! This recording has nothing to do with what happened. I was forced by Patrice to put the child in the washing machine against my will." "Oh, so you admit to doing it yourself?" But you forced me to." I immediately played another recording from my phone. It was Janice's voice saying, "I washed your baby in the laundry." Her face turned pale as she listened. "Janice kept coming to our house every day, hitting and kicking me, so I've been collecting evidence all along." I had suspected something fishy about Janice's unusually cheerful demeanor that day, so I kept the recording function on my mobile phone active. Janice fell to her knees and after a moment, looked up and clung to me. "Please, don't tell the police. I don't want to get arrested for this." "That's too easy for you. You put an innocent child through this. And you almost did a terrible thing by mistaking my daughter for Opal's child and putting her in the washing machine." "What do you mean? Opal's daughter is dead, isn't she?" The story about the baby dying after being put in the washing machine was a lie to deceive Janice. Opal had set up the washing machine and left for a moment. Janice then put the baby inside and closed the lid. But she didn't know how to use the washing machine and left, thinking it had started. Opal returned, switched it on, and then realized there was a child inside. There was no danger to the baby's life, but Opal was still furious at Janice. "Even my relatives accusing me was all an act to catch you off guard. You're no longer welcome in this family." "But how can this be?" Janice collapsed to the floor. Afterward, Janice was arrested by the police called by the relatives. She was rejected by her beloved brother. "Never contact me again." And cut off by all the relatives. Even if she gets out of jail, there's no one left to help her. Meanwhile, Opal's child who was put in the washing machine has fully recovered. My daughter is growing up healthy, playing with the other children like sisters, as Bryant and I watch them fondly every day. My name is Sophie. I've been a housewife for 3 years now, married. My husband Tim works for a top-tier company as a businessman, and we live on the 20th floor of a high-rise apartment. The night view from our living room is incredibly beautiful, but being raised in the countryside, I initially wanted in a lower-floor apartment when we first got married. However, I agreed to accommodate my husband's wish to live in a high-rise. We both belonged to the same tennis club in college. Tim, 2 years my senior, was a leader, whereas I joined somewhat casually and was a rather inconspicuous member. Back then, Tim had a girlfriend, so we weren't that close during college. But, a couple of years after I graduated and started working at a law firm, I ran into Tim by chance at a bar. Feeling nostalgic, we chatted about old times and exchanged contact information. Both of us were single at the time, so we gradually began to date. Tim was as sociable as ever with a wealth of topics, and I often found myself listening to his stories. Working at a top-tier company, Tim faced a lot of stress, so dating me seemed to be a source of encouragement for him. After dating for about a year and a half, Tim proposed to me. I had just started my 3rd year at the law firm and acquired my paralegal certification, and I wanted to continue working even after marriage, but I earn enough for us to live comfortably. I want you, Sophie, to stay at home, he said, so I resigned from my job upon marrying him. I never disliked cooking or housekeeping, even when I lived alone, so I enjoyed my days as a housewife. With no financial worries and living in a high-rise, even my parents and friends envied me. So, I focused on making sure Tim could concentrate on his work, carefully planning meals with balanced nutrition and cleaning diligently every day. Then, one day, as Tim was enjoying his favorite hamburger steak at the dinner table, he cheerfully said,
"We've been invited to dinner by the couple living on the top floor."
"Eh? That stunningly handsome and beautiful couple who looks like celebrities?"
"Yeah, exactly. I sometimes see the husband at the gym downstairs. We're the same age, which surprised me."
Our high-rise has a community gym on the 2nd floor. I'm not fond of machine workouts and only occasionally go for yoga, but Tim, who loves exercise, goes 2 or 3 times a week.
"Really?
That intelligent-looking man with glasses?"
"Yeah. He's an IT company CEO, apparently. Well, living on the top floor, he must be doing well."
"Then, should we book a fancy restaurant for the dinner?"
"No, we've been invited to their place."
Tim explained that he bumped into the couple at the apartment entrance today and got invited.
"Sophie, they said they'd like you to come too."
"Is that okay? I've only exchanged brief greetings with them."
"It's an invitation, so why not? Besides, I'm curious about the top floor."
Tim, who can easily socialize with anyone, said. On the other hand, I, being shy, wasn't too keen on the idea. I wondered if it was just a polite gesture from them. But before I knew it, the plan became a reality, and we were visiting them this weekend. I brought some simple homemade dishes, but the couple had a professional chef cook for us. It was my first experience of such a luxury, so I felt overwhelmed. However, Wendy, the wife, was friendly and easy to talk to, and by the end of the meal, I felt as comfortable as with a friend. Excited, we talked about our experience. Even after returning from Wendy's place.
"I haven't had such a good chat in a long time. It was truly enjoyable."
Becoming a housewife meant I didn't get to see my friends as much, so meeting Wendy was a delightful event for me.
"Maybe you could go for lunch with her sometimes? Wendy doesn't seem to work every day. And having a chef at home, that's just on another level."
Wendy worked as a freelance designer, handling wallpaper and curtain designs, and seemed to have her own clientele, working at her own pace. "I often work from home, so let's have tea together sometime," she suggested as we were leaving.
"Yeah, she's as beautiful as a movie star, but so approachable and genuinely nice. I'd be happy to become friends with her." "Yeah, she really is beautiful. Probably the most beautiful woman I've ever met."
"Really? Saying that in front of me?"
No, it's different. Sophie, you're cute, right? It's a different type."
You don't have to explain so desperately. I know myself well enough. I made a slightly pouting face, but seeing Tim's wry smile, I burst into laughter. Seeing me laugh, Tim joined in. It had been a while since we had such a lively atmosphere, joking around. Maybe it was all thanks to meeting the Wendy couple. But little did I know then, this encounter would lead to an incredible challenge. Since then, Tim and I haven't visited Wendy's place together, but Wendy and I became close enough to frequently meet for lunch or tea. One of my worries was that Tim and I were unable to have children. I was considering fertility treatment but couldn't bring myself to discuss it with Tim. I could openly share these feelings with Wendy, though. Fertility treatment can be tough. Maybe it's okay to leave things to nature for a while? Yeah, maybe. But somehow, I feel like Tim isn't that keen on having children. I see. It's tough, isn't it, the feelings between a couple? In my case, it's the opposite.
My husband wants kids, but I'm not so enthusiastic.
Really?
Yeah. I had a miscarriage before. After that experience, I thought maybe it's okay not to try to get pregnant again.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was insensitive of me.
No, don't worry about it. It's all in the past now.
Seeing Wendy's smiling response, I thought how strong she was.
You're right. I should just let nature take its course for a bit. I need to cherish the happiness I have now.
Wendy's expression seemed to cloud over for a moment as she looked at my smiling face.
Shall we head back? I have a design I need to think about by tomorrow.
I nodded to Wendy's always graceful demeanor, wondering if I had just imagined that brief change. But from that day on, every time we met, Wendy seemed to be getting thinner. One day, concerned, I asked her,
Wendy, is something troubling you? I might not be able to solve it, but I'm here to listen if you want.
Thank you. Actually, my husband and I are talking about divorce.
What?
I was speechless with shock. They had seemed so happy when Tim and I visited their home. What could have happened? Sophie, you're the only one I can talk to. What should I do? Wendy began to speak slowly, tears in her eyes. It seems my husband really wanted children. We've had arguments before, but I never imagined he was having an affair. According to Wendy, her husband was involved with a colleague at work. He had told her he would pay compensation for a divorce. Can you believe it? Before we were married, other men proposed to me too. He worked so hard every day to win me over, and now he wants to leave? What am I supposed to do now?
It's shocking. I shouldn't interfere in your marriage, but maybe you should talk to your husband again?
While feeling a bit uneasy about Wendy's situation, I chose my words carefully to avoid hurting her. After pouring her heart out to me, she whispered,
Things will surely work out.
And then Wendy left. That evening at dinner, I opened up to Tim about Wendy and her husband's situation. How is Wendy's husband doing lately?
That's the thing, I haven't seen him recently. He hasn't been at the gym for about a week now.
Is that so? But he didn't seem like the type to cheat.
What are you talking about? It's always the serious, intellectual types that turn out to be the worst.
Initially, Tim had praised him for being an IT company CEO, but his sudden change of attitude made me feel uneasy. Within a month, Wendy came to tell me they were getting a divorce. Oh, what should I say?
It's okay. I've come to terms with it. For now, I'll be staying here.
Alone?
Yes. I arranged that as part of the conditions of the divorce. Kind of like a compensation.
Seeing Wendy so nonchalant about it scared me. Can people really change this much in such a short time? Still, knowing it wasn't my place to comment on their decision, I continued my friendship with Wendy as before. However, not long after this incident, cracks began to appear in my own marriage with Tim. Tim started coming home later than before and often went out on weekends. He claimed he was working overtime or attending business drinking parties, but sometimes he wouldn't contact me until after midnight, and I had to confront him about it.
Tim, I understand that work is busy, but isn't it too much lately?
What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Is it really just work?
What else would it be? Of course, it's work.
Then, at least let me know when you'll be late. I prepare meals and everything.
Huh. Sometimes, a sudden client dinner comes up. I have more responsibilities at work now. Being a housewife who plays at home, you wouldn't understand.
I was half astonished by Tim's selfish reasoning. Wasn't it Tim who wanted me to stay home in the first place? I thought I was making our daily life comfortable for him. Ignoring my opinion, Tim just walked away to his bedroom. We had started sleeping in separate bedrooms a few months ago, per Tim's request. I need proper sleep for work, he had said, but our intimate life had also disappeared, making me suspect he might be seeing someone else. Tired of having negative thoughts at home every day, I considered returning to work. So, I discussed this with Wendy.
It's not just me going through this, huh?
I haven't confirmed he's cheating, but I'm tired of suspecting him every day. That's why I'm thinking of going back to my old job.
That sounds good. I think you should work. Besides, I have a feeling Tim might have found someone else.
Wendy's words about someone else stuck in my mind. Maybe, but until I hear it from him, I've decided not to press the issue anymore. Wendy, thanks for listening. I'll try my best to get back into employment. Wendy nodded slowly, giving me her usual graceful smile. The next day, I went to the law firm where I used to work. There, I found out that Georgie, the lawyer I used to work for as a paralegal, had left the firm. Apparently, he had opened a detective agency a year ago. He was the one who taught me various job skills since my first year as a professional. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was thanks to him I became a paralegal. Wanting to discuss my future career, I decided to visit his detective agency.
Georgie, long time no see. Surprised you came all this way. It's been a while, hasn't it? Since your wedding, so about 3 years?
It's been that long already. You helped me so much.
No problem. So, what brings you here today? What happened?
As I discussed my intention to return to work, I ended up honestly sharing my marital troubles and suspicions that my husband might have a mistress.
Our office is a detective agency, quite different from your previous job. How about working here? Really? Yeah, we're actually short-handed and we're just thinking of hiring someone. We've been quite busy since we started, receiving investigation requests from the law firm I used to work at. Income is more than double what I earned as a lawyer. I can offer you a similar salary to before. Of course, this job isn't always pleasant. There are times when the pay doesn't even add up to $3 an hour.
Georgie, you're incredible. But why did you decide to quit being a lawyer?
Maybe I wanted to change my life,
Georgie said, looking distant as if recalling those days. Then, looking me straight in the eyes, he continued.
I think it's important for you to start a new life by investigating Tim and uncovering the truth.
Something inside me seemed to overflow at his words. Nodding.
I'll pay the investigation fee, please do it,
I quickly replied. The next day, I met Wendy at our usual cafe for lunch and told her about my new job. I didn't mention it was a detective agency, just said it was an investigation office opened by my former boss.
The pay might be less than $3 an hour for some tasks, but I feel like I can utilize my previous experience. I'll give it my best. That's great. I'm rooting for you. I'm thinking of going on a trip tomorrow for a change of scenery. You've been through a lot, Wendy. Enjoy your trip. Thank you.
Wendy responded with an even brighter smile than usual. That was the last day I saw my friend Wendy. A few days later, Georgie called me in to report the investigation results, and I was in disbelief. Tim's mistress was Wendy. Their affair had been going on for over a year. That meant they were already involved when our families had a dinner together. I can't believe it. Wendy was so kind, listening to all my troubles. Probably just a fling at first. But Wendy's husband must have noticed. Inviting you over might have been a warning to Tim. I don't know what Wendy told you, but her husband is a serious man, not the type to have affairs. Unbelievable. I was so shocked I couldn't say anything more. There's plenty of evidence. You could get a significant amount of compensation. Tim's on a business trip now, right? Yes. After managing to reply, something struck me, and I looked at Georgie. He nodded solemnly, placing a photograph in front of me. It showed Tim and Wendy entering a resort hotel together. They were on a trip. Eventually, Tim and I divorced. I didn't ask for compensation. Instead, I cited irreconcilable differences as the reason of the divorce. Leaving the house, I started working, renting a room in the building of the detective agency. Tim and Wendy remarried without any remorse. are you really okay with this? Georgie asked me, but for me, it was all according to plan. However, I never thought I'd witness it with my own eyes. A year later, I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband, Tim. It's been a while. How's work going? I heard it's like $3 an hour. Well, keep at it. He spoke in a mocking tone, and I replied, after a year, you still know nothing.
What do you mean?
Why don't you ask Wendy? Tim left with a look of dissatisfaction, but that night, he called me in a frenzy.
Did you know about this?
Know what?
That Wendy is buried in debt.
Wendy had always been a big spender. Though she claimed to be a designer, she didn't really make much. I knew. I knew you were involved with her for over a year while still married to me. Oh, and one more thing. While you were dating her, she miscarried a child from another boyfriend.
That's a lie, right?
You knew everything and still married her because you loved her, right? Good luck with that. Bye. I hung up and immediately blocked Tim's number. You finally put a period in that chapter of your life. You did well. Georgie, who had overheard the conversation, spoke to me gently. I couldn't hold back my tears. It was the first time I cried since the divorce. Georgie, without saying a word, just held me. After that, Georgie and I became the best partners, both in work and personal life. Apparently, he had been in love with me since we first met. Now, I love him very much too. Tim, on the other hand, ended up filing for bankruptcy because he couldn't pay off Wendy's huge debts. He couldn't stay at his company and now works for a delivery service.
This isn't what I signed up for.
He spends his days dealing with Wendy, who constantly complains. They betrayed people without a second thought, but will they ever realize the consequences of their actions? The shining moment of life, that's a wedding. It's the important day when you become the star. That's why you want to make it a memorable and wonderful event. Everyone would think so. Especially for a bride, it's something you absolutely want to succeed. But what if it gets ruined? What if the groom's family is the one who ruins it?
Be grateful we're taking you as our daughter-in-law,
says Ben, my father-in-law.
We'll teach you proper manners. Be thankful,
says Emma, my mother-in-law. My parents' word is law. Obey everything, says my husband. Could you tolerate such a thing? I'm Mary, 25 years old. I work as an office clerk at a small company. I met my boyfriend, Tom, through work. Today, we went to Tom's parents' house. We're getting married, so we came for a family meeting. Tom's parents, whom I'm meeting for the first time. Standing in front of their large house, I swallowed nervously.
Don't be so tense. Relax, they're my parents, says Tom. Yeah. Do I look okay? Will they accept me? Don't worry, you'll be fine,
Tom lightly says and reaches for the front door. Nervously, I enter the house. We're greeted by Tom's mom. A woman with her hair neatly tied back, giving off a calm aura. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary. First impressions are crucial, so I greet her energetically. Then, so you're Tom's. Emma says just that and retreats to the back. I'm taken aback when Tom urges me to come inside. I feel like my efforts are being undermined. In the living room, a man, presumably Tom's father, is already seated on the sofa.
Hello, Dad, Tom says. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary.
I greet him, thinking this must be Ben. Then, behind his glasses, sharp eyes pierce through me. So, you're Tom's girlfriend. Quite plain, but sit down anyway. Again, I'm taken aback by his words. What? Plain? Sure, I dressed modestly today, but to say it to my face. The atmosphere is unpleasant from the start. Is this normal when meeting a son's fiancé? Amidst the awkwardness, I sit on the sofa as prompted. Tom sits next to me. An uncomfortable silence follows. Ben crosses his arms and closes his eyes, while Tom casually plays with his phone. After a while, Emma comes in with coffee. "Thank you," I say, but Emma just looks at me without a word. Extremely awkward. Why is it so awkward? Thinking that these will be my in-laws makes me a bit reluctant. But marriage is about patience, right? It's not easy to get along with people from a completely different background all of a sudden. Anyway, I just need to be patient for now. It would be troublesome if they opposed our marriage because they disliked me. I stayed silent, not wanting to stir the waters. "So? We've decided to get married." Tom finally spoke up when Ben urged him. "Hey." It's an important conversation, and he's casually mentioning it while fiddling with his mobile phone. That's what I thought inside, but I definitely couldn't say that in front of my future in-laws. I sighed inwardly and turned back to them.
"I may not be perfect, but please."
"Why did you choose such a plain woman?"
"Excuse me?"
I was about to introduce myself when Emma cut me off. And she said something unbelievable. "Plain, that's what Ben called me earlier too. Tom is very handsome, as you can see. He deserves a more beautiful woman. How could our son choose someone like you? It's a shock to me as a mother. Do you understand?" "I'm sorry. How am I supposed to understand that? Should I say he's not that handsome? That would probably end badly." I apologized, suppressing my swirling emotions, feeling the injustice of why I even had to apologize. But Emma's onslaught didn't stop. First of all, Tom had better marriage proposals. The daughter of a prestigious patisserie, the young lady of a major IT company. All from beautiful families. And you've ruined all those opportunities. How will you take responsibility?
Responsibility?
If there really were such amazing proposals, I'm sorry. But why do I have to apologize for that? Tom, on his part, was no help. Why isn't he supporting me? Feeling my glaring gaze, Tom hastily looked up from his mobile phone.
"Mom, that's enough. I chose Mary because I want her. Don't nitpick."
"But you..."
"Emma, that's enough. You're making Mary uncomfortable."
Still, Ben. Even when her son and husband told her, Emma still seemed to have something to say. Ben stopped her and then looked at me. "By the way, what do your parents do?" "My dad is a salaried worker, but my mother passed away when I was young. My father, not finding anyone he loved more than her, didn't remarry and raised me by himself." When I shared this, they looked surprised. "From a single-parent family, I see." "Oh, single parent, huh? What's with that tone?" "Both of them together." The stifling atmosphere didn't change, and that was the end of the day. My unease never cleared up until the end. Tom did say he had no intention of marrying anyone but Mary, but I could feel the mood of almost yielding to his parents' pressure. I'm feeling uneasy. This house, it's full of nothing but labeling, calling everything plain or criticizing for being from a single-parent family. I forgot the uneasiness I felt back then in the midst of the busy wedding preparations. There was just so much to do. Staying within the budget meant not all wishes could be fulfilled. I only had one chance for a dress change, so I spent a lot of time choosing the dress. I was satisfied with the flawless piece I selected. Negotiations with the venue, preparing the invitations, there were so many things to take care of. It was a hectic period at work too. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed, and the wedding day arrived. After the ceremony in the church chapel, I took a moment to breathe in the waiting room, and then my father came in.
"Congratulations, Mary."
"Thank you, Dad." His eyes were red. The walk down the aisle earlier in the church, my arm linked with his. He cried all the way until we reached Tom, the groom.
"Dad, you're crying too much."
Can't help it. My little girl is getting married. I wish your mother in heaven could see this.
I'm sure she's watching from above.
Yes.
It must have been tough for a father to raise a daughter alone. I had my rebellious moments during adolescence. There were things easier to consult with a mother, not so easy with a father. Our relationship strained, and at times, I rebelled fiercely. But now, as an adult, I understand. My father was always there, watching over me. Clumsy, but he truly loved me and took great care of me. Dad, thank you for everything. I'm going to be happy. He cried again. Oops. The moment I smiled, he was overcome with emotion and burst into tears. Then the reception started. The bride and groom's parents sat beside them. Next to me was naturally my father alone. He managed to stop crying, but his nose was still runny. I watched the ceremony proceed with a wry smile, thinking, can't be helped. But one thing was bothering me. My in-laws. Across from Tom, my in-laws were eating and drinking voraciously. In such situations, the bride and groom are the main characters and hardly get to eat anything. You have to listen attentively to speeches from bosses and friends, and you have to smile even at dull performances. Nervous and attentive, there's no time to eat. Even my father only occasionally sipped water and hardly ate. In contrast, my in-laws just kept eating. And drinking. We had arranged for quite expensive wine, but they drank it like water. It was as if they were trying to get their money's worth. With a strained face, I decided to enjoy the reception. But the incident happened right after that. It was during the candle service when we were about to express our gratitude to our parents. First, it was my turn. Me, Tom, and my father stood up. Just as I was about to read the letter I had prepared. What's this, a letter to the parents? To a single parent? What's there to say? He probably didn't even raise you properly. It's true, there's such a thing as the air freezing in a place. I felt the room freeze. Who made that remark just now? I looked around in surprise. It was Ben. Ben? As if to interrupt my astonished voice, Ben raised his tone even further.
Seriously? Sending us a daughter with no manners? How do you plan to support us without a decent income? Excuse me?
What is he talking about? Supporting them? I might understand if it's about Tom's support. But why does my income matter? Confused, I tilted my head, and Ben pointed at me and yelled.
Listen. We're taking you as a daughter-in-law, so be grateful. If you have any gratitude, send us money every month. Excuse me?
Shocked, I remained still, and then Emma spoke up.
Really? Such a plain daughter, we didn't really want her. Even the dress she chose is plain, unbearably plain. Being from a single-parent family, you probably weren't raised properly. It's a good opportunity. You're becoming our daughter-in-law, so we'll teach you manners. Be thankful. Emma?
Apparently, the two were completely drunk, their faces bright red. Perhaps this was their true feelings coming out. I couldn't believe my in-laws could think this way. I was just stunned. In a panic, I looked at Tom.
Your parents are saying such things, but this must be a mistake, right? Support? Manners? They're just drunk, right?
Verbal abuse towards his soon-to-be wife. I expected Tom to get angry, but my expectation was quickly betrayed. What? What are you talking about? My parents are saying it, so as their daughter-in-law, it's natural for you to obey, right?
Excuse me? What's that supposed to mean?
Don't worry, don't worry. If you follow Dad and Mom's instructions, nothing will go wrong. That's how someone outstanding like me was raised. Well, I did choose my marriage partner myself. Mary, you'll be fine. If you listen to my parents, everything will work out. Tom wasn't drunk. He hadn't drunk a drop. Yet, these words.
What are you talking about? Support? Manners? That's ridiculous.
The moment I vehemently objected. Tom's face, twisted in a way I'd never seen before, loomed in front of me. Anger filled his expression.
What? You don't understand? My parents' word is absolute. As their daughter-in-law, you must obey everything. Don't you get it? This is why single parent.
The moment I heard Tom's words, something inside me snapped. I felt cold. It was too much. I'd had enough. In an instant, my love for him vanished. I couldn't understand what I had ever seen in this man. I turned around, feeling completely detached. And my father, seeing my face, nodded subtly.
"Shall we go?"
he said.
"Yes, let's."
My father and I stood up simultaneously and started walking towards the exit.
Wait.
Tom and his parents were stunned.
Hey Mary, what's this joke?
You're the one joking.
Don't touch me.
I reflexively brushed off Tom's hand as he tried to grab me and turned towards the attendees.
I apologize to everyone who took the time to come here today. Today's reception will be canceled here. We will make amends at a later date.
I greeted everyone firmly and solemnly.
What are you doing, making decisions on your own?
Tom was panicking.
Shut up. How can I continue after being ridiculed to this extent?
I had never directed my anger at Tom before. But this time, it had exceeded my limits of patience.
Mary, what are you doing? You're bringing shame upon us. I won't forgive this. I don't need your permission. Don't you understand the atmosphere here? Continuing the reception in such a frozen venue is abnormal.
At my remark, Emma hurriedly looked around. Company colleagues, relatives, friends, many acquaintances. Their gazes were cold. The three of them, subjected to a mix of astonishment and anger. It seemed they finally realized their unreasonable behavior. Emma started.
It was just a little joke,
she said. Too late.
What joke? How can such despicable behavior happen at such an important occasion? That's right, there's a limit to making fun of someone. Marrying into a family like yours would be pitiful for the bride. You should definitely call it off.
Boos started all at once. The in-laws and Tom turned pale. Then someone stepped forward. It was my father.
Indeed, Mary did go through hardships. Being raised only by me might have had its inconveniences. But I believe she turned out to be a wonderful daughter.
I listened silently to my father's words.
At least, she's not a daughter who should be exploited and disciplined by you. What about you, after all? What's wrong with us? Parents who exploit money from their DIL, a son who doesn't even try to protect his bride. To me, it seems like you're the ones who failed in parenting.
Voices of support rose from all over the venue at my father's words. The three of them, subjected to blame, turned paler. Then I stepped forward. And I said,
Tom, I will not marry you. I'm better off without a family like yours. Don't involve me in your life again.
At these words, Tom finally started crying, and the family of three left the venue as if fleeing. A big round of applause erupted from the venue immediately after. The applause, marking the finale of the cancelled reception, made me smile wryly as I held my father's hand, and he returned the smile. What happened afterward? Of course, the marriage was called off. Fortunately, we hadn't registered the marriage, so there was no record of divorce. Tom, I thought he might come crying and begging, but instead, he became defiant and insisted on reconciling, but of course, I politely declined with a smile. The chaotic scene at the reception quickly spread among the company and beyond, as company colleagues were also invited. He faced judgmental glances and, amidst the discomfort, was transferred to a distant rural sales office. It was essentially a demotion. Right up until he moved away. I'm sorry. You're the only one for me. I'll wait forever. He kept sending messages. I just smiled and blocked his number. Tom's parents became pariahs among their relatives. Somehow the news of their mid-reception exit spread, and they're living quietly, almost hiding in their neighborhood.
please, come and be our DIL to clear up the misunderstanding.
They pleaded, but what was that all about? When they became too persistent, I warned them that I might take legal action, and they finally quieted down. Since then, the two followed Tom to the countryside. I hope they never come back. For years have passed since then. In my arms is a small life. After what happened, I thought I wouldn't marry for a while, but life is unpredictable. I met a man through work and am now living a happy married life.
Mary, let me hold the baby too, says Dad.
David, you just held him, it's my turn now, says Nick. You get to hold him every day, I only get to occasionally, let me have a turn, Dad protests. Both of you, it's time for the baby to sleep. You can hold him again later. I smile wryly at my father and husband vying for the baby. Feeling the baby stir in my arms, I think to myself, may your life be filled with happiness. Just like my father raised me happily. With love, as he loved me. I will protect you. Because I love you. So, may your life be filled with immense happiness.